Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Probably Doesn't Matter. The following podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
It does not constitute a patient-provider relationship.
As the topics discussed may not pertain to your individual health conditions.
So you should always check with your fucking doctor.
And you should always seek medical advice from a provider with whom you've established care with.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your listen.
Boom.
You like how I dusted it the other day, kind of?
Did you dust this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks.
I Lysoled it, actually.
That's great. When I was over here, I looked straight at it, got at just right down at level with it, and just blew a fine powder.
I need a dust off.
Oh, you need a can of dust off?
Not to like huff, but yeah, just
You should have told me. I have a brand new can of dust off. I could have brought down.
worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I don't know why I didn't bring it.
I feel good. Is everyone
Feeling good.
feeling about right?
I think I'm feeling about
I'm
right.
feeling so good that I wanted to raise a salute before we get started here.
Cheers.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cool. Thanks,
Luke,
guys.
Katie,
Everybody.
for being such
Of
great
course.
hosts, and I can't thank you enough for having me on.
Happy to have you. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Probably Doesn't Matter. I am Luke Atkinson. Sitting to my left today is my lovely wife, Katie.
Hello.
Hi, Katie.
Hello.
And we are joined by Brian DeShazo
Yes. Hello, everyone.
and the great and powerful Vince Fuoco.
Wow.
Did I
you.
do it? Did I do Fuoco?
Fuoco.
Yeah, you got it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so and you were saying it's Italian.
Yep.
Oh, that makes sense. I was
Dirty
gonna ask.
Italians. Aren't you guys like dying from this virus left and right? Isn't that what's happening over there?
You know, you got a good point. I should know the death toll over in Europe, in addition to other countries like
Yeah.
Korea and China.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, I think it's definitely hit pretty hard there.
Yeah, craziness. So it's the Corona podcast. Here we are.
It's the official This Probably Doesn't Matter coronavirus podcast.
We're all sitting here in full hazmat gear, surgical masks.
If only you could see us.
I don't like to be in public anymore. Just joking.
No, I would say it's outside of work changed my life absolutely zero. Being in somewhat of a healthcare field, I've had some effects at work. Vince, you're a pharmacist, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what's life been like as a pharmacist?
Well, I mean, it's the main reason that I'm here in the first place is because when I went to WSU, that's how I met Mr. DeShazo. And, it's just been an unbelievable challenge. But going from being just a student and having the desire to want to become a pharmacist and pursuing the necessary classes that to get to that point, and then getting into pharmacy school and then surviving it, getting through the board examinations, the law examinations, and now taking I spent 9 years to get to that point. Now some people can do it sooner, quicker, I guess. But once you finally get to that point, it's just an unbelievable struggle and challenge, but it's also rewarding at times to finally put what you have in your mind as a sound practice into your day-to-day life to try and make a positive effect on other people. I mean,
it's and you're in one of those career paths where, like you were saying, you really do have an insane amount of groundwork foundation to lay before you ever get to walk into the building. I can't imagine. I haven't done anything for 9 years that I've been interested in, honestly. So I'm someone who picks up hobbies and drops them a couple days later. I love my hobbies.
Say, check back with us in 8 years. You may have one that you have hung on to for
this long. Hey, if you're listening to This Probably Doesn't Matter in 8 years, then it'll all be that'll be the longest.
We're on 1 year already.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll raise a glass to 8 more.
Yeah.
Salud.
Hey.
Salud.
This is gonna go downhill quick. Just keep drinking.
well, absolutely. I mean,
has there been? Obviously can't medicate Corona, so has there been any work impact with this whole thing going on?
You know what? I actually heard for just the first time last week that so in downtown Seattle, I live in Auburn.
Right.
I work in South Seattle. I kind of float all over the place, Des Moines, Federal Way.
Okay.
I heard that the cases, the first cases of the actual disease made it to Virginia Mason, which is in downtown Seattle. There's 3 hospitals in downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
Harborview, which is the level 1 trauma, like within. I mean,
that's where we fly all of our folks to.
Yep.
If they get airlifted, they're going. Yep.
You can see the hospital almost from right here.
Yeah.
So we watch the helicopter come in and out. Not quite daily, but
A couple times
pretty
a week.
frequently.
Yeah, they might also be going to Sacred Heart in Spokane too. I know that they have a helipad, and but Harborview is that main hospital. Then they have Swedish, and then Virginia Mason.
Okay.
And so, from what I understand, I have a close friend of mine who is a resident, a third-year resident in Virginia Mason, and he was posting that they had their first cases of the disease in the downtown Seattle area. Don't know the fate of those individuals. Hope it's obviously good.
Right.
You mentioned there is no cure for it.
Yeah.
So it's really, I mean, when you get the flu, you can receive antiviral treatment that doesn't necessarily cure you of it.
Isn't that new also? I never had seen, because I saw a commercial the other day for some sort of flu. If you go in your first 48 hours, we can like cut it down with
Correct.
some sort of injection. I think this year's the first time I ever saw that. I don't know how long that's been around.
The injection, I can't remember the name of the drug, but there is an oral medication called Tamiflu. I mean, you've probably seen commercials for that.
Maybe that's the one I saw.
When I was in pharmacy school, it was brand new. The injection,
Okay.
the antiviral, and so basically the way that the flu causes disease is, first of all, it is considered a lower respiratory disease, where we're in comparison to like strep throat or sinusitis or like a runny nose and things like that. That's considered upper. And so the way that the disease proliferates is it's spherical in shape, the virus that is, and it has these proteins, right? So you've heard
Doesn't Corona look almost exact?
I'm actually not 100% sure on that.
At least the graphics I keep seeing posted would be spherical as well.
Yeah.
With all the little Shrek ears coming off of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are called, those are like,
about exactly what they look like.
They sure do. Yeah.
well, yeah, no, those are surface proteins
Okay.
that play a role in at least for the flu. Okay. So you remember swine flu, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I think I got it. That was H1N1, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I lived right next to the airport in Seattle at the time.
Yeah.
And during the whole scare, got very, very ill. Me and a good friend of mine, Jeff Knapp from Jeff is Butthurt episode, don't know. Anyway,
check him out.
We never went and actually got tested. We just sat and were really sick for a couple weeks. May have been the flu. I have no idea.
Absolutely. I mean, the numbers. I remember being in Pullman at the time.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So was I. It was 2009, I think.
No.
9
This
or
is
10.
I know you're right. Isn't it 09?
Yeah, I think spring of 09 maybe.
Was that H1N1?
I was in Pullman.
Someone Google that.
2010, 11, and 12. It was one
Okay.
of those years.
Okay. Maybe it
would
was
have
10
been
then.
maybe April of 10,
But
March or April.
the number. It was
Excuse me.
Good deal.
there was an
Nice
inflated.
headphones.
This goes April 09.
That like ricocheted
Okay.
through my head.
This goes April 09 for swine flu. Whoa, I'm yelling into my mic. This goes April 2009 for swine flu.
All right. Well, shit. I thought it hit when I was in Pullman. So it could. I mean, it might have lingered in.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah, Pullman was one of the kind of epicenters of where it. I don't know if it was where it started, but they definitely had a lot of cases there.
Yeah.
Did Pullman?
Yeah,
Well, see,
absolutely.
but initially, there was sort of a theory that a lot of the students there just used that as an excuse to cut class.
Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, it used to be that you would just use beer as an excuse to cut class.
you only have swine flu Monday after a hard weekend, but then you can.
Or an upcoming midterm.
Yeah. It's one of those 24-hour flus for sure.
That's funny.
Absolutely. And so you had mentioned and H1N1, right? So the surface proteins are divided into, I don't know the exact names of that. It's hemagglutinin and neuro something, right? And so every year when the vaccine comes out, it is targeted to prevent against, there's different types. There's H3 and 2.
And that's what they speculate every year on
correct.
what they need.
Well, yeah. So they try to predict what they think is going to be the most proliferative, and then they try to put in a vaccine what they think is going to be the most disease-causing. And so remember a couple years ago, there was a mutation during the middle of the flu season, which rendered the vaccine almost completely useless.
Do you take a flu shot?
I have to.
You have to,
yeah,
don't you?
If I have to prove that I've received it. Otherwise, I can't work where I work.
Yeah.
Do you work for like a larger hospital, or do you work for an organization that travels, or do you work for like a specific pharmacy?
Right now I'm working for which is
do you want to say it? You want to say it on the podcast? Or do you want us to bleep it?
No, it's
okay.
No, it's not a problem at all. I don't have any I don't have any issue with that at all.
Great.
But so we
I have to ask. I've had to bleep employers before. Anyway,
you're more than welcome to do that.
I won't. I won't.
All right.
That's all up to you, man.
Yeah.
You.
No, I mean, I hope that I wouldn't say anything that would jeopardize my employment with them, but
we'll see if we can't get a couple more beers in here.
Probably doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, so Brian, on the way over here, we drove by a clinic. What was it called?
Oh, that was Columbia Valley Community Health.
Gotcha. So now, in Yakima, they have the Yakima's farmers. The Yakima.
Yeah, and there might be one of those up in Quincy also, like the farming community sort of deals.
Yep, they have a.
There's a company here in
hospital
town. Stamil employs a ton of people, and they have their own clinic for their employees.
Yeah.
With
Well, that must be since I've worked there.
Oh yeah, this is pretty
it's
new.
newer.
Yeah.
Last 10 years, 5 years.
Yeah, so they have their own doctors.
The clinic is
nurses on
across
staff.
from the State Patrol out on Easy Street.
Okay.
You make your way out
cool
to
perk, yeah.
Spokane. They have CHAS, Community Health Association of Spokane, and there's another clinic called Health Point. They are just kind of a regional nonprofit community-based clinic. They cater mostly to the Latino population. Okay. And so while I've been working there, I've actually taught and learned how to speak Spanish, not only from my coworkers, but but the patients as well. I mean,
getting pretty good.
Un poquito.
Yeah,
sí.
That's good.
I mean,
not quite conversational,
not
but
quite.
You can get by.
It's amazing that when you're put in the situation to speak it, you know, and can actually say more than you're currently aware of.
Totally, yeah.
And so, but obviously I still need formal training. But it's shocking how few pharmacists there are just in general that can speak it. And so when I get put into the situation to interact with patients and coworkers, in comparison to those who don't know how to speak it at all.
Right.
Yeah. It's.
And a lot of it, because I think I know a decent amount of Spanish. My main hiccup is I'm way too embarrassed to even try speaking it.
Yeah.
Because I took 2 years in high school and then 2 semesters in college. So, like, as far as vocab and all that, I know a lot of words, sentence syntax, and actually how to speak. Like, yeah, I could probably communicate with someone in a pinch, but I know that the sentence would sound like absolute dog shit to them. Like, it would get through, but I know I don't speak it correctly, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, man. I mean, the way that I learn is based. I learn from the verbs, and so, and then at that point, you have to. You mentioned syntax, so there are rules that you need to be able to identify each part of the sentence. You got to know how to say it, and then you need to know honestly, it's like a math equation for me, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And so, so when we describe a noun using an adjective in English, the adjective goes in front of the noun. So you would say, like similar medication in Espanol es medicamento similar. So and it's reversed.
Sure.
And then now, so those are, I mean, that's just one of the rules. Now you have to account for whether or not the verb or the noun you're talking about is plural, masculine, feminine, and you have to incorporate idioms, and it has been a process, and it's been rewarding. And the best part is learning from my patients in that regard. And they teach me on a regular basis. I got like 3-year-old kids coming up to me, and one little boy was like, "¿Cómo te llama?" And I didn't even know "¿Cómo te llamas?" And I was like, I thought he was asking me how I was, like "¿Cómo está?" In comparison. I still am.
My name's pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Exactly.
I don't know where the llamas are. You're going to have to look for them yourself.
And so, it's been, but I've worked with people that are put in that situation as well. And if they don't know anything, it is nada. I mean, they don't, no hablan nada. You know what I'm saying? And so the part of the challenge is actually having the courage to try and fail.
Totally.
Be willing to be corrected, being gracious in being corrected, going home and, learning, and then building on day by day.
Yeah.
Eventually, I've learned about like all different types of programs, and whether it be Latin America or South America, where I plan on going to. I know that if I go for a month or two at a time, I stand a good chance of returning. Conversation.
Oh, that immersion, yeah.
That's the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, culture, immersion, and you have to be forced to say it all. And so it's just been a tremendous, it's just going back to, I mean, after graduation, I mean, this wouldn't have taken place during pharmacy school because I wasn't fluent going into it. And so it's just been a part of that entire process, and it's just made me, I feel like, just a better individual. As
Totally.
A result. Yeah, I mean,
I wish I spoke Spanish, but I can't retain it for shit.
Like anyone
I can't
who's
retain
bilingual.
anything,
No.
actually. Like, I went to Russia for 2 weeks, and I didn't come home with anything.
Das vidanya?
Nope, I don't even remember that.
Privyet.
Nope.
Now, I don't know what they mean, or I can't right at this moment remember what they mean, but
Das vidanya is goodbye.
I believe you're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then
yeah,
the
yeah.
other word you
Why
said was
Vince is schooling you guys in the language you guys just brought
Das
up.
vidanya. Did you guys ever play Call of Duty or Black
yeah.
Ops or anything like that?
Was that your Russian experience?
Well, so I mean, did you ever so Black Ops? They had during the zombies. Nikolai.
Oh, yeah.
From,
No, I remember.
This gun is fucking amazing.
The Nazi zombies.
Oh man, I played the shit out of that game.
I have not played very many games in my life, but I cannot tell you how many afternoons were spent smoking pot and playing Nazi zombies, dude. There's been quite a few of them. So.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like there were some afternoons with same setting and then Tiger Woods too.
Yes, Tiger Woods
So.
golf. That's if I have
do
a
love
360.
Tiger
I
Woods.
have not upgraded since then. And there's like 4 games, but it's Tiger Woods golf or Madden.
What's the
which
one you
is- I
just
play
bought for
poorly.
us to play? And I've
Oh,
still
Borderlands. You haven't played Borderlands with me yet. I bought the original Borderlands.
Oh, nice.
that
for
game is
360.
damn near 10 years old, isn't it?
It's real old.
Yeah.
I found it online
Not
for
new.
$10. Jeff and I played till like the 10th character level up or something, and we got to this spot that we can't beat. It's like the very beginning of the game. I'm so bad at it. I Googled how to do it, and people are like, if you're Googling this right now, you suck at video games. You shouldn't try to even keep playing.
That's very helpful. Thank you for trolling me as I'm trying to get better at this.
Oh man,
Fantastic.
yeah,
That's
they're
funny.
they're not my jam as far as
I used to play video games with my brother, but I would just beat him up when he won, so he stopped playing with me.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely no. They have taken a good chunk of my life.
is that one of the leisure time activities?
Oh, I mean, there was a drought for several years. I got to be honest. I mean, when I was working, but it's that I still have a ton of friends and family that get after it, but it's when
The cool thing about gaming anymore is that it's all so connected that if you got your headset on right, like, and you're playing with someone, you can be hanging out with your buddy across the country.
So much more of a social experience
and
than it ever
chatting.
used to be.
oh yeah,
What blows my mind is where the video game thing went into, like almost a professional sports world.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't believe how much money some of those guys are making.
Oh, they have. I've seen they have leagues of incredible competition that invite actual live studio audiences.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
They're filling stadiums with people watching these
that's
guys.
unbelievable. Yeah.
I forget what some of the bigger ones are. I think League of Legends is one of them.
Okay.
Halo was for the longest time.
Sure.
I mean, that was the biggest. And I mean, you talk about, we were just watching some boxing just over there. They have like first place in these tournaments.
Yeah.
The purses were, I mean, those guys lived off that money.
If only there was something where I could enter a tournament drinking Keystone Light and smoking cigarettes, because I feel like that's my calling. I could do pretty good at that.
Well, we just need to make the Whiskey Olympics an actual thing, right?
I guess so. Oh, man.
No, absolutely. But I can't thank you enough for having me on. This is
awesome.
outstanding. Like,
sorry, I'm yawning. I'm not really tired. It's just been a long week.
no, I hear you.
You ever get done with a Monday and you're like, wow, this has been a long week? That was kind of-
Yeah, like every
That's how
week
I
of my
felt.
life.
Day one.
Realize you have 4 days in front of you and you think, oh, shit, this is going to be an even longer week by the time it's over.
I wish someone would have invented it as a 4-day work week and a 3-day weekend.
There's a lot of
people do that.
I worked a 40 in 3 or 4 days.
I know, but that's not like
Briefly.
Some tens,
actual
yeah.
what the. It's not like
There have
what
been,
everyone really
yes,
does.
There
Like,
have been
it's very-
places that have gone to 4-day at 32 even and let you cut 8 hours, and found higher returns on even less hours just because employees were more happy, which isn't
totally.
like super surprising to me.
No, it
but
makes quite a bit of sense.
Well, there's a reason why a lot of countries have a daily siesta. Right?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'd be into the siesta
Yeah.
for sure.
Take a
We do
3-4
do
hour
it.
break, have a meal,
Mhm.
have a nap,
Yep.
come back at it, and keep going for the rest of the day.
Nah.
Refreshed, recharged.
See, I'd
and ready to
rather get
power
up and
through.
like go 7 to 2
And just
have
be
it
done.
all afternoon.
Yeah, I could see that too.
I like an early.
I notice if I eat a shitty lunch, like if I go like power down a burrito or something, I'm garbage for the next 2 hours.
You get that afternoon lull
I'm
in
terrible.
spades, huh? Yeah.
Oh, I get it too. It's just the carbs.
I don't eat lunch.
Right.
I try not to eat a very heavy lunch while I'm working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I get a morning lull, an afternoon lull.
Oh
an
no, there
evening
is
lull.
there's definitely a. Well, I mean, it's often it is associated with Thanksgiving and the
Right.
tyramine effect of eating so much turkey that it creates.
Is that real?
I
Was it
wonder.
It can't be real because I don't
tryptophan.
really
Excuse me,
even.
yes.
Yeah.
Tryptophan.
I don't-
Tryptophan. Brad's
I
got
don't
it
eat
over
the
here.
turkey.
I wonder how much of it is actually due to the tryptophan in turkey and how much of it is just due to the volume of food
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you're eating.
It
It
as
has to be
opposed
the
a
volume of
normal
food
meal.
because
I think
don't.
it is.
I don't eat a lot of turkey, and I'll totally go take a nap.
Oh yeah.
I actually think it's related to hyperglycemia,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just
Your body has to produce insulin to counteract it, and
Yep.
so you're zonked off of that insulin.
well, your body puts you out, and so you stop eating to prevent the continual climb of your blood sugar.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
let's put him to sleep so he doesn't kill himself.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
people have. I mean, people have been put into a coma because of uncontrolled blood sugar. I mean, it hospitalizes people. It kills people.
Is that a symptom of being diabetic?
Absolutely?
Hyperglycemic. Yeah.
You can actually go into a coma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hyper
Well,
or
like,
hypo.
do you go into a coma or do they induce it on you?
It is
No, you're-
often what puts you into it because
Oh, okay.
it's if your blood sugar is too high for too long, it can cause incredible damage to your vital organs, and so your body will start to shut down. People that have uncontrolled, say for example, type 2 diabetes, will end up. I mean, they can, in addition to the slow deterioration of their arteries and their blood vessels, it can it can kill you. And so
I seem to remember something where your kidneys can become really affected with the volume of sugar molecules that are going through renal tubules can really fuck up those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your blood.
In layman's terms.
Well, each one of your blood vessels is kind of like a mini raft, and they are coated with glycogen, and those rafts. It's like, imagine you're on a river through a narrow creek, and those sugar molecules that are sticking off are literally branching out to the luminal wall. Eventually, certain organs have what are called capillaries, which are literally only one blood vessel thick.
Blood cell.
Yes, excuse me, blood cell. Thank you so much.
I got you.
Struggling right now, my goodness. And so when those blood cells are, not coated with sugar, they can travel through those capillaries just fine. But if they have those sugar molecules sticking off, they start to clog, and then...
So sugar literally adheres to blood molecules?
Yes. Yeah, it's
used. So what's the function of that in a healthy person that's adhering to a blood molecule to be distributed? I mean, what's the deal?
Well,
Sugar
sugar
as cellular energy, right?
Exactly. It's one of the fastest energy sources that the body does use.
So the blood distributes those sugar molecules to various parts of your body.
Correct.
Okay.
For muscle function, brain function.
Yeah.
When I was in pharmacy school, and I think this has changed in terms of the knowledge, but they used to say that the brain only worked on sugar, only functioned on sugar.
Interesting.
And so I don't know. They said I can't remember the exact percentage. I want to say it was like 75%. That was the fuel source that it used. I don't know the exact percentage these days, but your body utilizes that. A lot of your muscles utilize it, and you have what are called glycogen stores in the muscle. So you get a conversion of blood glucose into the muscle that's stored energy for the muscle to use down, and it's converted into glycogen. Insulin is what moves the sugar molecule into the muscle cell to be stored as glycogen for later use down the road.
Interesting.
When your body is tapped of that glycogen, then it starts using fat and protein as...
So I was going to ask you just now, so ultimately when fat is being used for energy, is it getting broken down to a sugar? I mean, does it have to wind up all the way there?
Fatty acids.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on everyone doing the keto diet?
I've definitely tried it myself. I don't know,
because if I were to look at my macros, and I've been losing some weight over the last couple months as I drink a bunch of beer today, but I lost 30 pounds in like 40 days, something like that. If you looked at my macros, my diet, I wasn't a full keto diet, but I would have been about 60% fat, and really low carb. Not no carb as keto is, but really low carb. And I lost a bunch of weight doing it.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know if it's, do you think it's harmful? I mean, because there's a lot of people who would say it's not good for you.
There's just definitely no, I'm no expert in it. I mean,
Sure.
I think a dietitian would know a lot more than me, but from what I understand, we have 3 macronutrients to choose from in terms of what actually provide us energy. When you consume vitamins and minerals and things like that, those can't really be used to create energy for your body to utilize.
Right.
And so it is essentially, now if you want to break it down, like you look at that in comparison to the food pyramid, for example, that
which changes every 2 days.
Well, I mean, they also
anymore.
have you're right, but the way that they break it down is, the 40 to 45% carbs, 20 to 25% protein, 10 to 30% fat, depending on what it is. I think it's a combination of who you are as an individual.
Totally, it's got to be to you, right?
Exactly.
Everyone's body's different.
Some people really benefit from keto, and I mean, I've definitely tried it, not in the same extent, But I have read into it as well, and from what I understand, I mean, it's what you're doing is you're depleting those glycogen stores, like I talked about, and so once those glycogen stores are gone, you can now tap into your fat stores,
right?
And so your body switches. They say it becomes what's called fat adapted.
Okay.
And so your primary energy source is no longer carbohydrates.
Right.
And you want to keep it fat.
Your body's used to burning the fat. It's what it's set up to do. It's doing that as energy.
Exactly.
So I'm looking at a day in early February. I was 68% fat, 18% protein, and 14% carbs. And that was an average day while I was losing a lot of weight.
Yeah. There's, essentially it's, I think there's the Atkins diet, right?
Yep.
That is, that was keto before it became keto.
It was keto. Eat all the bacon you want and you're going to lose weight.
Which, is
I actually really like their supplements too. Like their shakes are super good.
Yeah.
Atkins does still sell. That's great. They're still.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, it might even be considered more strict than keto. I mean, but some people will limit their carbohydrate intake to 20 grams a day.
Yeah, that's low.
Which I don't, would probably break down to like 5 or 6% carbs.
Yeah.
Right. When I was in pharmacy school, and what you will hear from a lot of other medical students as well is that they got next to no nutrition education. And I'm not saying that I should have gotten a tremendous amount of nutrition education in my schooling, but one of the dietitians that came in and taught us a few lectures on it was a high fat advocate, if you will. So, obviously you're looking at 100% of the 3 different macronutrients that you have to choose from. So varying from individual to individual, you can find a percentage, and that may change as time goes on throughout the year, depending on whether or not, how much you exercise, whether you're male, female. There's so many different moving parts, and you really have to find how that works for you. And then again, now you can start including whether or not you're a vegan, whether or not I've heard people have had tremendous success being just a carnivore, which,
right?
And exclusively eating animal products,
right?
Like
only meat.
No vegetables,
Yeah.
even when you eat vegetables, like you drastically limit the amount of carbohydrates you get, because we can't really digest vegetables to get the glucose from the vegetables,
right?
So in comparison to simple sugars or starches from like potatoes.
But if you're not going to supplement with a vitamin, vegetables are going to be where you're going to get a lot of that vitamin mineral from, or am I wrong on that?
I would say the animal products have a tremendous amount of vitamin and minerals as well.
Okay.
Those protein cells are chock full of all the different cations that you would need in terms of electrolytes, and but to want to include vegetables and other non-vegetables as well, it gets very complicated, and I definitely don't disagree with it, and like I said, it has shown benefits for myself. I know a lot of people that have had success on it. I also know a lot of people who have done it for a little while, seen great results, and then plateaued, and then not and so how do you continue past that plateau and keep losing and not running into that same so it's I think some people have tried to go vegan, which would wipe them out, you know what I mean, and they would be underweight and just low on energy, but they thought they were doing the right thing because they were eating vegan.
Sure.
And then they would switch it up and then feel great, or switch over to the keto, or
I would say the vegan thing, and no matter whether it's a morality reason that you go into it or anything like that, it definitely requires the most knowledge to do it and not have negative health benefits.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think you have to really watch that diet carefully.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're not killing yourself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, our body has some minimum requirements, and plenty of people have lived and had thrived off of the vegan diet.
Right.
I do think that we need all 3 macronutrients. A lot of people, this country, and a lot of health advocates say you should avoid fat, and you're made of fat. You know what I mean? Like every cell in your body literally is wrapped by fat. And you are getting rid, those cells are bursting and being sloughed off, whether it comes, from your skin or, internally. And so those cells have to be replaced and rebuilt. And, eating protein and sugar or carbohydrates is not going to replenish that. And so, which makes sense as to, consuming fat is as a necessity.
Right.
But a vegan can consume coconut oil is mostly fat, and
avocado.
Exactly.
Huge fan.
Exactly.
Yeah, love avocados.
Those are great.
So
absolutely.
There's definitely non-animal sources of fat. I'm not saying that animal fat is a necessity. People have lived entire lives as vegans, without it, and so. But I think that a lot of the health benefits from consuming animal products is just, we've lived on it.
Did you watch Game Changers?
Is that a documentary?
It's a doc on Netflix. I want to say, I'm asking, and I haven't watched it, but I've listened to some people discuss it. But it was professional athletes that were doing vegan diets and having high levels of success on a purely vegan diet. And I'm not knocking it. I'm 100% sure that if you do it and you're educated about it, you can do it correctly.
Yeah.
I think if you don't do the due diligence of some research on how to do it right, that it can be dangerous. That's what my thoughts are on it.
Yeah. No, I've heard stories of people having success on it, and I've heard stories of like people just having terrible results and then making a change, and whatever tweak they made, whether it was reintroducing animal products or it started to benefit them at that point. So where I've learned a lot of the nutritional knowledge from is it's a book called The Complete Guide to Fasting.
Okay.
It's a Canadian, written by a Canadian doctor, paired with a guy who has a podcast called Living La Vida Low Carb, and so they partnered together to write this book. And so I have in that book I learned about fasting on bone stock, and so it's you can take bones from any animal, whether it be pork, chicken, fish, doesn't matter. You can make a bone stock. So the difference, a lot of people call it bone broth. Bone broth has a combination of meat and bones. Bone stock is just bones. And so, you take it. I believe that there's like an incredible amount of, and this is an interesting topic. Like there's actual pharmacologic, like from a pharmacy standpoint, there's like some foods and actually have pharmacological substances in them, in addition to providing those macronutrients that we talked about, the fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates. Right. And so, but I believe within those bones is magic. I mean, it's where your immune system is produced. You know what I mean? Like your bone marrow produces B cells, which helps to fight off disease, and in addition to having just the bone marrow consists of just tremendous amounts of nutrients. And so what happens is when you make this stock, it is essentially ketogenic.
Okay. And
so you do mix it in with vegetables, but what happens is the idea behind it is when you sip solely from, and in this book, like there's a tremendous amount of things that you can consume. Like a lot of people confuse fasting with starvation. Starvation is no water, no food, nothing. Starvation is it's not healthy for you. Fasting is, it incorporates a tremendous amount of different options. You can still consume calories and still technically be fasting. It's not very many. It might be 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 throughout the day, but your body is still in a state where that ketogenesis takes over. And the most important aspect of it is you shutting off your insulin production. And when you shut off your insulin production, you're no longer taking the sugar from your blood cells and putting it into the glycogen and storing it as glycogen in your muscles. So it's the opposite effect. Your glycogen stores are being converted to the blood sugar. You're depleting the blood sugar, and then you get into that fat adapted state.
Right.
And So then your body starts to break down the fat, burning that, and hopefully you see a loss in weight.
Interesting.
You just broke it down better than any article I think I've ever read it.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Seriously.
That's why we bring in the expert.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating process. And now, should everyone try it? Absolutely not. I mean, there's definitely
Brian.
Yeah,
Right,
probably
that'd be
not. I would
dangerous.
definitely have some wasting syndrome going on if I tried to pull it off.
Brian at 120 pounds. No, and I had done some reading that was like, hey, if you're over X amount body fat, what I read was 33, which is kind of right where I was sitting before I lost weight. They said you can do as drastic a diet if you want if you're over 30 on body fat. So as a male who should be a lot lower. So I've dropped 6.5, almost 7% body fat in the last couple months.
That's awesome, man.
And you hit the nail on the head. A lot of my days were right around 750 to 800 calories.
Yeah.
And it's tough to do if you're used to eating like a fat guy, you know. You're doing way more than a 50% cut. I took what I'm guessing were generally 3,000 calorie days down to 700 calorie days, but saw great results from doing it. And never, you have some growing pains at the beginning on your stomach and your appetite and all that. But as far as once I was a week or two into it, a 700 calorie day really, it didn't hurt, right? Yeah. Hunger pains are... you can manage them. They're not too bad. And if you're drinking your water, that really does help mitigate them. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's what I was noticing.
And even the portions, like right now, like we ate a pretty big lunch. Like I was more than I needed. And I normally would have eaten double on most of that stuff. Yeah. So it's like... We'll
be over today when we get done drinking this beer. But,
that's
hey, that's okay. Hey, let's take a quick break. I gotta pee.
Yeah, me too.
And we'll be right back. You guys won't even know that the break happened.
You'll never miss us.
All right.
Sorry, I'm pushing him into you.
Brian is just running under the table.
Hello, Dad.
Oh. And then
we're good. We're good. I got it.
There.
This is one of the advantages of being quite svelte. Cool. All right. Headphones back in.
Sorry about your headphones, Brian.
Oh no, it's totally fine. I'm a jackass. I should have brought the JBLs. No, these are fine. Honestly, they are totally good. I just got to get them adjusted.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's good.
It's too early. Oh, you guys all have still. You guys got to finish your glasses before I can open this next beer.
Oh, that's true.
Yep. Let me.
Whoop. Whoop-a-doop.
Yep.
And
yeah,
the time
that was
that
one
you
thing
guys
I should
pour
have.
your beers, will be
You'll be done.
You can open it.
Yep.
The nice part about having all four glasses is I can kind of portion it a little bit better.
Yep.
When I can see all four of them
Yep.
at once.
Let me down the hatch here.
Well, hey, I'm not telling you to chug your beer.
There's less than it appears.
Well, Brian, yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
I also can't imagine how warm those have gotten.
Mine's fresh.
That's a Coors.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've already had like 2 more Coors since
Yeah,
the
okay.
last one.
No, that's not still the old micro.
I'm just babying the shit out of it so that I don't get kind of slurry.
No, actually, Brian, we all appreciate that from you. On behalf of all this probably doesn't matter listeners, the fact that you're not chugging beer over there,
you're welcome,
we
folks.
salute you.
My
I can chug beer.
By the way, are we recording?
We're back.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
we're
Yeah,
Very
yes.
good. Very nice.
So going back to that book, my favorite saying from that book is, if you feast, you must fast. And if you fast, you must feast. But the real question is what do you do in between?
Right.
Yeah, true.
That's the tricky part. So now do you remain keto, or are you vegan, or are you carnivore, or are you something else, right?
Right.
And so I'm gonna go around the table here, and I want everyone's guess as to the longest controlled fast in human history in number of days. Brian, I'm gonna start with you.
Like just guessing though, like who did the longest or what?
No.
Like,
What the days were.
How long someone has gone fasting. Now, this individual did, I believe, a multivitamin, had salt substitutes, and water. I don't remember the entire, but he was technically fasting. Again, like I was saying,
could be up to 7, something like that, on calories, or was he like not eating?
I don't know what his caloric intake
Okay.
was. It could have been 0. It could have been a couple hundred, but it's considered the fasted state.
Okay. So I'm gonna go with sort of what I would think of for me as like a mid-range estimate, and I'm gonna go with 240 days.
Okay.
Luke? Oh, I was higher than that. I like where I am now. I was 300.
Okay. Katie?
Days?
Yeah,
Days.
we're going days.
This guy lived in a room probably no bigger than the one we're in right now, with physicians and other healthcare professional monitoring him.
Okay. So I'm lowballing this then, I'm sure.
Shout out to Vince and Geaux Brewing
Yes,
for the
Auburn,
delicious
Washington.
microbrews
Yes.
we've been having. This is the Auburn Ale.
For those of you trying to Google that at home, that's Geaux, the Cajun style spelling.
If you are an LSU Tiger, go Tigers. Now,
There
that
you go.
sounds almost blasphemous coming from a Coug, but,
Oh, go Cougs.
Brian wishes he was higher.
Days wise. I don't know. I'm going to say 200.
200. The answer is 382 days.
Hey.
Go Luke.
So
Luke,
this
what a
individual
surprise.
I was going to be surprised if it was over a year, but
Yes.
they slammed that by 23rd. No.
No, that's
20 days.
17 days.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah.
That's truly remarkable.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes,
You're
that was a
welcome.
great guess, Luke. This guy went from 425 pounds down to 190.
Yeah.
And when he was done, they asked him how he felt, and he said he was a little hungry. And
I
so,
would think so, yeah.
but obviously, not everyone needs to fast that long. And so I
Hey,
just
way to just get it done. I mean,
This one's mine?
that's yes. If
We have
you're
the
gonna
same
if you're
glass.
gonna do it, I'm handing this to you too. I'll clink you. If you're gonna do it, I'll clink you. If you're gonna do it, it's gonna be shitty no matter what, and you may as well. Hey, cheers.
Cheers.
You may as well just get it done as fast as you can. Like
pun intended.
it's gonna
Oh my God.
suck.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it?
That's a good beer.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. That's very smooth. That
I think
has
the
a
beer is
nice,
good. You should
full
try the
flavor.
food. They have
That's good.
I was so it's a Cajun style New Orleans style brewery, and the chef will put together fried okra for you. He'll
Oh,
put
wow.
together a po' boy made out of any fish you want, or even alligator, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Why am I not picturing Auburn on the map in my brain?
So okay,
Down by Tacoma, right?
in between,
Oh,
about
okay.
halfway in
Oh.
between Seattle
there
and
we go.
Tacoma.
Okay.
So
It's the one that's always backed up on the exit to turn off on. Like when you go to bypass everything and you take
Oh,
the
yeah,
Auburn
the Auburn
exit.
Tacoma
Is it before
cutoff.
Renton?
Yeah.
Before or after Renton?
it is south of Renton.
Oh, okay.
So, if you're downtown Seattle, you hop onto I-5 or 99, and you continue south. I-5 will eventually, obviously, keep going, and then it has an opportunity. You have an opportunity to get on 405 to head over to the east side, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, those areas, and then you can then branch off onto 167, and it is right off of 167.
Okay.
Hop on 18.
The Auburn exit is what
Oh,
you take if you're
18.
going to go
Yeah,
down
Highway
to
18.
Tacoma
Yep.
or Gate
Yep.
Harbor or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you can stay on I-5, but the 167 will take you right through
Yeah.
that Kent.
What's your commute? Are you stuck in traffic over there?
I mean, 167 and I-5 are just backed up. I mean,
Yeah, no. How long do you sit in your car in the morning?
well, honestly, from where I do work, without traffic, I can get to most of where I work in Burien or South Seattle
Uh-huh.
in
Yeah.
under 30 minutes.
How Burien.
It adds about a 20 to 30 minute.
Yeah.
That's not bad though.
No, not at all.
That's not too
I mean, shit,
bad.
I've driven to Bellingham on some days, or even down to Vancouver. So, I mean,
Wow.
it's nothing. But I mean, I love that area. I'm planning on moving to Burien here pretty soon,
Are you?
and it's,
Now, I heard Burien was getting a once-over, a little gentrified, so to speak. Is it getting better? Better. I say better.
well,
Is it
you ever
getting
heard
better?
of White Center was a
Yeah. I've done Burien, White Center,
Yeah.
Kent, Des Moines, that whole area. for a few months back when I was younger. So I was there for a while.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, not like 6 months maybe. In those areas, I was staying with a good friend of mine, Jeff.
Shout out Jeff
Yet
Knapp.
again,
Like
Jeff Knapp,
third
your
or fourth
intimate?
time in this.
Were you working or going to school?
No, I was doing drugs. Really. That's all I was doing at that point.
Way to be honest,
so,
man.
Yeah,
I like it.
You know, every place has its bad spots, and I've never felt threatened or
totally. I never felt physically threatened ever down there. I've never gotten involved in anything overly nefarious other than purchasing and doing my own substances. But it's not like I was. Yeah, if you're living a life in organized crime or something like that, then of course you have a lot higher chance of getting in trouble in an area. But me, just as a dude living my life, never felt like I was in danger.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
I mean, of course, you're right near West Seattle as well, which is, I mean, if you've ever been to Alki Beach,
I love it
just
over there.
like, oh, it's just gorgeous.
Alki's beautiful.
Oh, man.
His cousin used to live right there on the beach,
Yeah.
like not like on it, but she
Right.
was just a few blocks off,
Absolutely.
and it was a really nice spot.
They have just, I mean, honestly, the most inspiring view of Seattle. It's,
Lake Union's pretty too, like on
Yes.
the other side where you can see the needle and all that.
Absolutely.
I like it over there too.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
super pretty.
really excited. I just accepted a position at the one of the pharmacies in Burien, and so probably I might stay in Algona for a little longer, but eventually I want to be able to move closer to that area,
Totally.
cut down on that commute that you're talking about.
Right, exactly.
And but there's just so much to do out there, and to be ingrained in that city, as a healthcare provider, and to extracurricularly be a part of it as well. I think that's just going to be a lot of
Totally.
fun.
That's awesome.
But
What do you guys have on those pages over there?
I was just
Someone
going to ask
read
you how many
something.
Yeah,
Mariners
like-
games
Absolutely, I
that
mean,
you've been to
yeah,
in the
that's
last
so many
couple of
notes.
years.
well, I mean, my podcast is it's
Hey, why don't we? Okay,
Let's
this
plug
is an
this,
hour
yeah.
in. Yeah, why don't we plug your podcast?
it's in its infancy. I mean, like I said, in comparison to what you guys have, I use a cell phone, and
It's great.
That's perfect.
and but
We could have done this whole thing on a cell phone.
I
And it still would have been the smartest podcast that we've done yet. So
I think that I really appreciate you guys allowing me to come over here and just honestly take a look at your setup, because this is a multifaceted. It's really grown into an industry, and there's a technological side to it. There is a marketing side to it, and there's a content side to it. And
Totally.
what you guys have put together and been willing to share with me, I think, is just tremendous, and I can't thank you enough. And obviously, when I head back home, Brian and I have talked about kind of the types of equipment that you have. I mean, watching you set things up, and just like you're sipping on your beer and shooting the shit as you're plugging in, and like test and all this, and so I think once I'm able to put that together.
Hey, the technological side is the easiest. Hey, everyone, keep listening to this. Probably doesn't matter, and go to the website. We're gonna revamp the whole website soon. It's gonna get cooler. Thanks for hanging with
it's
us.
going to be a lot more
So-
user-friendly.
so
with
what's
We
a lot
have
more fun
neglected
stuff involved.
some of the marketing side of this
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
it's just
My podcast is
we
named,
love all of you listeners. Thank
Shut
you.
up, Luke.
Thank you.
Katie apparently doesn't love you as much as I do.
I do. You're just talking. I asked him a question.
Okay, I was
Stop
just,
talking.
I'm still talking. Yeah.
My
Repeat the
podcast
question.
doesn't even have a searchable name, but
Okay.
I do eventually, once I implement the components that I mentioned, it will. I love the idea of a name called Pick a Topic.
Oh, don't
Because-
say it. Don't say it on the podcast. Someone will go buy it before you have the
You better
chance
log
to.
on and let's get it.
I can't believe it's not already taken,
but
Is it not? Have you looked it up?
It might be. Who knows?
Possibly, but then I'll just add my name, and then if someone's got my name, because if you include your name in the podcast,
like pick a topic with
Vince Fuoco. I mean, who-
yeah,
you go.
like
if someone's going to
Yeah.
steal that, then
They're a real shithead, I'll tell you that.
I mean, that's good. If your name's not Vince Fuoco and you got a podcast, but anyways,
Your name is Vince Fuoco. You guys should probably join up and do a podcast together.
Yeah.
You just call it the Vince
We're
Fuoco
gonna look it up
podcast,
real quick
plural.
and see if the URL.
I'll find it on Wix.
Luke's infamous for finding URLs on.
I
buying
own.
them.
Well, yeah, I bought one for another guy on a former podcast.
Connor.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say anything about it because it's almost up, and I want to see if he wants it. That's why I
Right.
bought it.
Well,
So-
you bought one for you that we haven't done shit
and I
with
still
yet.
haven't touched, but I own all the secret files of the UnitedStates.com.
Yep.
So
Literally.
that's hilarious.
That seems like a gold mine of an opportunity that hasn't been dealt with yet.
All
there
the
are people who
secret
have
files
made
of the
fortunes just coming up with URLs that other people eventually think of and actually have money to run a website with that URL and then find out that it's already owned. And once, they
we
reach
could
out.
sell it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that idea. Honey.
No one wants that one yet.
Business opportunity available.
If anyone wants to buy all the secret files of the UnitedStates.com, please get a hold of me. This probably doesn't matter at gmail.com. And I would probably sell it, but it's a funny website to put something on for sure.
Absolutely. To answer your question, Luke, Brian and I got together earlier, and a lot of the things that we have talked about so far are not my 100% expertise. And now that I'm thinking about it, I probably fumbled and stumbled through a lot of that information. But I do know quite a few things about the things that I did write down, and that first one is called the placebo effect.
Okay.
And it is the most remarkable concept to me in terms of how medicine is shaped and defined, and how us as practitioners go about it, because everything is measured up against it. If you have a drug and you are a pharmaceutical industry, in order to get into the market, you have to prove that you are better than the placebo effect.
So what is the standard on the placebo effect?
Well, essentially, it depends on the style of trial you are running.
We can't get you pickatopic.com, by the way.
Oh, is it? It's already taken.
I can put you on pickatopic.net if you wanted that.
That's not bad. That's a.
So the fact that .net is still, that's something. At
Yeah.
least. But
It's
anyway,
not bad
we
at
can
all.
we can talk about that in a second here.
Absolutely. So let's say you have, first of all, I'm going to give you a story of when I experienced the placebo effect personally, and it had nothing to do with drugs, believe it or not. I was a 16, 17-year-old kid and used to work out at a 24-hour fitness just right down the street from my house.
Sure.
And, I would work out there all the time, and this guy approached me, and he said he had this bag full of crystals, and he said that which is sound, I mean, his innuendo is
That's the normal thing that happens to you as someone comes up to you. This happens to everyone at least a couple times a week.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I was like, "Do you ingest these crystals?" And he was like, "No." It was a little trinket, and it was in a bag, and you would wear it as a necklace. And he said that when you put it close to the middle of your body, it would have its effect. And so what he would have me do is, for example, I would get on the bench when I was at the gym, and I would do a set of, maybe 10 bench presses on a certain right, and then he would move it towards my chest, and I fucking shit you not, it was easier. And we did all these kinds of different tests, like he had me bend over and touch my toes, and it was when it was not against my chest versus, and I felt like Gumby when it was, and that was, in my opinion, the placebo effect.
Totally.
And really what the placebo effect is a removal of inhibition. Because when you go to do something and you are maybe anxious about it, or you have a certain expectation about how it's going to go, you perform in a certain way. But when you believe that you have something that is going to aid you, your mind literally takes on improved capabilities to do that. And
so, like on a medication level,
I need one of these crystals.
No.
I was going to say, are you sure that it did what you said, or did he realign your heart chakra for you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you're not kidding, Brian. Holy shit.
On like a medical level, then
What medically is going on right now?
Yes,
Yeah. Exactly.
Like literally, you're saying it removes inhibitions. It's going to be, I am going to allow my body to heal itself of something,
Right.
which will actually work.
Depends on what you are studying. So let's take a blood pressure medication, for example.
Right.
Okay, we have a substance that is designed to lower your blood pressure and hopefully lead to some kind of outcome, whether that might be, let's say, decreased heart attack and stroke risk, right? In
Sure,
a
we're going to
trial,
lower your blood pressure with lisinopril. It's a diuretic. It's going to remove fluid from certain areas. It's going to make your heart not have to work as hard, right?
exactly.
Cheers.
Oh, no.
So in a essentially what a pharmaceutical industry will try to produce is a study where they will and they use what's called double blind or even sometimes triple blind.
Right.
It's they will give they'll have a batch of the active drug versus a batch of the placebo, which technically has nothing in it, and they will randomize a sample size of people, and they will give randomly people the active drug and then the placebo. And they will then measure the effect of the blood pressure lowering. And so they now measure this in data, and it gets put into a chart. And even though there's technically nothing in the placebo to lower your blood pressure, people taking the placebo will experience a blood pressure lowering. And so that creates a baseline effect in comparison to the active ingredient.
So, okay, this is what I wanted to ask you then. Nuts and bolts of that effect. The people that are getting better, were they going to get better no matter what? Or did them thinking they were going to get better make them get better?
Well,
right, like so it's like psychologically, statistically you have to say some of them were just going to get better.
Correct.
By accident in the next couple weeks.
They were told, so it doesn't matter what the placebo is. So if you have a blood pressure medication, it's going to lower your blood pressure. If you have a cholesterol medication, it's going to lower your cholesterol. And so if you are told this and you take this the way that it is technically prescribed, your body inside to the microscopic level will exhibit pharmacological effects even in the placebo group. And so now what the active ingredient has to do
it has to be higher than that. So physically what's going I gotta wonder physically what's going on in the placebo group.
Just don't mind him, he does interrupt a lot.
No worries.
I've done really good for most of this podcast.
It's been absolutely fantastic.
So now I'm gonna start
Don't worry about it.
So there are people who are just going to get better. I'm reiterating that point. On the people where the drug works because that's what your body's been told and you fully believe is going to happen, that all starts in the brain. It has to all start in the brain.
Right.
And
or their nervous system in general.
Right, that's what you would refer to as a psychosomatic effect. So if your mind thinks that an effect is going to happen, it can actually create the effect in the absence of a chemical that would create that effect.
This is way outside of the placebo effect then, but can people just manifest that on their own? Do you think that, like...
I think some people have those capabilities,
just all like, oh no, I'm going to cure this. Like, could that happen?
There are some people that, through various different forms of meditation, whether it's prayer or any type of, if you have the willpower to believe that what you are doing is going to make a positive effect, that is in a sense the placebo
That's
effect.
A placebo.
But the placebo, is it like an actual pill? Like, is it?
It is.
You take
It looks
a
like
sugar pill, right?
Well, they call it a sugar pill. They never put sugar in it.
Sure.
But it's so.
So what's in it? What is in a placebo pill?
Powder. Okay. It's powder. It's
right.
Nothing,
So in every tablet that you take, right, there's an active ingredient. There may be multiple active ingredients, and then you have what are called excipients, which are just non-pharmacologically active substances that help.
Podcast listener, Brian just shook his arms above his head as if celebrating a victory. We're not sure why.
It's because exactly the term that I had in my head is what Vince said. So I realized that in pharmacy school, I actually did learn something rather than nothing. So it was a small personal victory that you now all get to experience vicariously with me.
Okay.
So the excipients, is that a binder? I mean, is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's just to hold the pill together?
Well, that, and it also helps to deliver the drug into the bloodstream
Okay.
and to the site of action. One of my favorite one of the most amazing pharmacy things that I learned during my schooling was that you could have a cure for cancer, but if you cannot deliver the cure to the cancer, you have no cure. And so there's a lot of excipients that aid in delivering the pharmacologic entity to the site of action.
It's beyond just a physical binder to a pill.
But no, that's part of it. I mean, sometimes
some of it's just the glue that holds the thing together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of it might help. So when you swallow something,
I know about these from my ecstasy taking days.
Right. So
My mind is being blown right now. This
in
is
your
crazy.
MDMA taking days, some of the excipients might have been useful in helping that MDMA pass through the blood-brain barrier
Right.
and have a pharmacologic effect that you would experience as a dancey, smiley effect.
Yeah.
So could you take a placebo pill that makes you think you're going to have weight loss?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
What do you think supplements are?
Oh, the placebo. Like, is that really it?
I mean,
Well, there's pre-workout supplements
What about, like, green
that
tea,
actually
like
kick your
green-
ass.
well,
green-
that green tea is usually has caffeine in it,
Yeah.
Oh.
among maybe other herbal substances.
A lot of weight loss pills are going to just try to raise your internal temperature to burn more fat.
Right, they have a stimulant in them, and so you're going to be burning
Is that what
more
that
energy
is?
than
Well, you
you
used
typically
to
would.
do-
at a
Is that like what a
resting state.
pre-workout is?
Sure.
Well, so
Well-
caffeine is an appetite stimulant. I mean,
Suppressant.
suppressant. Excuse me. Thank you. God damn, I'm bass backwards in this one.
And
No,
what was,
you're good,
what was
man.
was it a pseudoephedrine? What was the original, like, really cool weight loss pill? You used to even buy it over the counter not that long ago. X. It has an X in the name. What is this?
Ephedrine.
Was it ephedrine?
I think that
Yes.
was the active ingredient,
and you
it
could
was
buy
ephedrine.
it. You could
Yeah.
buy it over the counter
Correct. Well, as a supplement.
back in the day.
But it has this like tremendous cardiovascular risk and it got a lot of that stuff gets pulled, but those
Because it gets
supplements
your heart rate going?
yeah, and a lot of people with underlying cardiovascular issues, maybe arrhythmias or hypertension in general, it may turn them over or make them worse, and then lead to stroke or arrhythmias that could cost.
Hey, do you know your resting heart rate?
I don't, just off the top of my head.
Well,
I do.
It's fairly
You absolutely could. This podcast has been brought to you by Fitbit. No, I'm just kidding.
So like at night, my resting, I've got it down sleeping to 55,
Yeah.
and then during the day, just like at my computer, I'm like 67, which is what I used to sleep at.
Yeah,
Like
That's-
I've gotten it down.
that's pretty good. Well, we were talking about the bicyclists listed on the pizza menu. What was the restaurant again?
at Garlini's.
Garlini's.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
so exactly, it was fantastic pizza. But
you should have the pasta. What are you doing?
those like
We're just having
Did
lunch.
you guys split a pizza?
We did.
We
Yeah,
did?
we had the
Go back.
incredible
You have to have the
Mertz.
pasta.
oh
was
yeah.
the I like that. I do like Garlini's. Was splitting a pizza reasonable? Were you hungry when you left?
No,
No, he
not at
actually. We have a couple slices left over, but he was saying
Nice.
I better stop.
all. Well, I was going to have too much grease on the brain to form functional thoughts to be on this podcast, so I went ahead and cooled it down.
Those bicyclists will have a resting heart rate in the 30s.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you start like
35?
when you're-
Well, we've been bicycling. You see our bike out here? Yeah, we've been
We're not there
bicycling.
yet.
I've
Hey, but
started. That's all I'm saying.
55 that's pretty good. I would say mine is in the
55
60s.
sleeping.
Yeah. But I mean, when
I
you're
don't know.
when you are sleeping, you're usually if you're horizontal. Some people sleep standing up, which is a whole other topic on its own. But when you're flat, right, your feet and your head are at the same, and your body just doesn't have to work as much to pump the blood to get circulation. So it's only natural that it doesn't require as much effort. So then, therefore, your heart can literally take a break.
30 seems so like I'm dead.
Some people die. Some people die in the 30s.
Yeah, that's great.
I've seen-
It just like seems so low.
I worked in an ICU, and a normal person who's not an elite athlete like that needed medications called vasopressors to clamp down on the blood vessels to keep their heart rate above 30 and into the 50s and 60s so that they didn't die. And if they started to creep down into the 40s and 30s,
I was gonna say anywhere under 50 is gonna be like an athletic
Yes,
person.
absolutely.
Right?
40s,
if you
Or a
guys
guys
have heart rate of
dangerous
40s,
medical
you're-
condition, one of the
you're-
two.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're
I was just surprised to get down into the 50s.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean,
Awesome job.
Thank you.
You're
So-
welcome.
Called
but
watching calories and working out.
Oh, I don't do
Tonight.
either of those things.
I'm gonna have a resting heart rate of 100 tonight. So
yeah.
Thank you, beer.
the placebo effect is a drug cannot. Well, technically, if you are measuring an outcome, whether it be, like I said, we're lowering blood pressure, we're trying to prevent heart attack and stroke, you are going to have the placebo effect is now going to be the baseline. And so your drug has to prove beyond a clinical doubt that it is better at that in lowering the blood pressure more so than the placebo and leading to a decreased risk in developing death from a stroke or a heart attack.
Right.
And so I used to think you can't do worse than placebo, but that's not technically true because you can have a drug that has worse side effects than the placebo because when you are measuring a drug, you're measuring the safety and the efficacy. And so you can technically have a drug worse than placebo that does not do better in the terms of the efficacy as the placebo but causes way more adverse reactions. So
interesting.
Yeah, what scares me about like all these commercials for pills or like medications
I have
is
one
like
I want to talk to you about too.
death is like death, cancer, like all these side effects, and it's like, why would I ever take that if those could potentially be the side effects?
Well, that becomes a contraindication. And so
talk to me
would I do
about
that?
Chantix.
Chantix is varenicline, and that is a direct nicotine agonist. And so what you are doing
Because I asked because of the side effects. So
they're
how does it happen? I mean, what happens?
Well, the what I'm supposed to counsel on when I dispense it is that if you experienced increased anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, you have to stop it. And
so if I had those before I ever got it prescribed, it'd be a really bad idea.
It is generally a and that's one of the things that I wrote down on my paper here is risk versus benefit.
Yeah.
So it ties into also the magic bullet effect. So that is another thing that I want to address in the podcast. When a lot of people, when they take a drug, they want it to just do what it's supposed to do. But the problem is that it doesn't always do that. And so you have to be, when you are taking it, you have to know that it is not, a magic bullet is, essentially the concept of a magic bullet is you take something and it provides a cure or a management of whatever you're trying to use it for without any side effects, right? It goes directly to the problem, solves it, and you don't see
Do those exist?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, it's
Can
called
you
the
name some?
steroid cream on my face.
Some.
Yeah.
Name some.
Antibiotics are magic
That's the
bullets.
magic bullet.
Those are good ones. There is a cure for hepatitis C.
Yes.
But the problem with that is it can cost $60,000 to $100,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Holy
isn't that fairly new?
Yes.
Could there be side effects that are undiscovered yet?
No, I mean,
No.
well, yes, that's called post-marketing. So many drugs that, a pharmaceutical company, what do they want, right? They've spent
Money.
Exactly. So they've spent tens of millions of dollars going into the entire process, and they want the best results and the least amount of issues by the time it hits the market so that it can make money, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, by the time it makes it to the market, they don't know about the potentially life-threatening issues if there are some. There's a diabetes medication called glitazone, and it helps to lower your blood sugar and prevent outcomes, cardiovascular. And that was one thing I forgot to mention earlier. A lot of people that have diabetes, they may not go into a coma, but they may also experience cardiovascular issues too. That's actually the main killer of diabetes that I spaced on earlier. But it turned out, 3 or 4 years later, after it reached the market, it was killing people due to people that had heart failure, and it actually induces heart failure. Steroids, you mentioned steroids for your skin. You can take steroids for inflammation, like maybe you have pneumonia. Steroids will actually cause diabetes if you're taking them at too high of doses for too long.
It's not gonna happen through my skin, is it?
No. This is if you're like taking something like prednisone, and you're taking a high dose for a very long time. It literally causes diabetes because it causes your blood sugar to go up, and leading to the same effect is if you had decreased pancreatic function, and all the other issues that come along with type 2 diabetes.
Gotcha.
A high dose like that can also lead to infection, right?
Correct. Immune suppression.
Yep.
So I started using, I had 2 weeks ago. So since August of last year, I've had a really bad facial breakout with like itching and dryness. And then
Was it eczema or was it?
So it was like eczema, and then it was like psoriasis, and then I was like, who fucking knows? And it's like not consistent. It's like every 2 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks. Like it's really random. And at first it started just as like an itch. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have like an itch. And my doctor was like, oh, you have eczema. So she gave me Desinide cream.
Yeah. It's a steroid.
And I was like, okay, like this is helping. And then it stopped helping. Like it calmed the itch, but it didn't like go away. And then my face was like getting inflamed. So I was actually having swelling in my eye sockets.
Oh, wow.
And then
generally steroids, you want to, when you apply a steroid.
Well, the steroid's new. So, like, I was having the swelling.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gone to the doctor yet. And I was waiting for my dermatology appointment. Because it's, like, fucking forever in Wenatchee. And it's so bad.
Way backed up.
So, finally, 2 weeks ago, a week before my dermatology appointment, I had a breakout where it caused little white bumps and a rash all up in my T-zone.
The steroid?
No.
No,
Like,
no,
I
just
had
the rash
this
itself
rash,
before
just
the steroid was
Gotcha.
ever applied.
Yeah. So I had this rash and swelling. So I went and they gave me the steroid cream. And now it's like the dermatologist gave me face wash and lotion to start next week. But I'm starting it now. But this morning I woke up with a really bad itch and inflammation. So I just put the steroid cream on again. And it's like, it's gone.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
it's crazy.
And then
I just don't get skin in general. But
realistically, you know,
there's my whole life story of my skin.
No, I mean, your complexion looks amazing right now. So
well, it's been a long day, but yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know, eczema is essentially a, you're looking at kind of, usually what the steroid works by slowing down the replication of the cells on the tissues.
Oh.
And so it makes its way into the nucleus, and you get a decrease in the dividing and of the skin tissue, leading to usually a decrease in inflammation. And so that's why those are effective. But you mentioned psoriasis. Oftentimes vitamin D or, you know, salicylic acid are fantastic.
Like taking it is good?
No, applying it.
Oh, okay.
So they have
As a
vitamin D
topical.
creams,
Yeah.
topicals. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a buddy who had he had these like, you know, elbow patches on sports coats and things like that. He had plaque psoriasis patches like that. And I was working and I had seen a prescriber go ahead and prescribe a vitamin D cream to somebody with plaque psoriasis, and I ended up making the recommendation to him to do that, and his patches had disappeared in a couple days after that.
Wow.
Yeah, but then he ended up that was the best recommendation I'd ever made, because those were ongoing. He had those for several months, if not years, and looking back, that was one of the best recommendations I ever made. Now I got lucky in that regard, but you know, I didn't do any harm in the recommendation. It turns out now that salicylic acid is what he reaches for when he goes to that.
Oh, interesting.
And it was one of the things that I had written. So I'm a big fan of coconut oil. In fact,
well, that's what's in the steroid cream that I have.
Really?
Yeah.
Uses
Well,
it like
I'll
as
show
a
you.
What would be
base.
the word for that again?
It's
The stuff that it's with?
Oh, it would be an excipient.
Excipient. That would be the coconut oil.
Whoa.
Would be the excipient in
But
that.
the cream I have does have coconut oil in it.
Oh, it really?
I'll
Okay.
show you it. It's
With a steroid?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it's
So-
a steroid
Duh,
cream with
Luke.
coconut oil in
So
it. Like,
probably-
that's what I'm saying.
Damn it.
Probably how it functions is the coconut oil works as a base, and then the active ingredient, the steroid, is mixed into it, and it helps carry dissolve it, and help it apply to the skin and work.
Take a sip of that, Vince, and we're gonna split this.
Thank you.
We're gonna split the
Well-
Breakside Pilsner. It's
So,
5.2.
The coconut oil definitely hydrates the skin too, which I was having really bad problems with it being so dry that like my face was literally peeling like a layer.
Exactly.
of
In fact,
skin.
that's the main recommendation when it comes to treating eczema is.
Well, and I don't even know if it's eczema. We don't
Yeah.
know if it's like I'm allergic to something within my skincare.
Yeah.
Because I have a pretty specific regimen I use with Rodan and Fields.
Shout out to Rodan and Fields.
But like I don't know if I've created an allergy to something in the skincare. I thought it was the makeup, so I stopped using the makeup, but it came back. But now it's not consistent either. It's like maybe hormonal, like I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely multiple factors at play, but the my theory, if you will, is again, if you look on the nutritional components or nutritional facts of coconut oil, it will break it down into carbs, protein, and fat. And saturated fat, coconut oil is 45% saturated fat, which is the composition. Well, so each cell is lined with what's called a phospholipid bilayer, which is a glycerol structure attached to 3 fatty acids, which is what saturated fat is. So if you have a saturated fat, it is a linear, we're talking hydrocarbons, and it zigzags like that. So you've heard of unsaturated fat. There's monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat. So if you have a saturated fat, it is linear zigzags, and then a monosaturated fat is, which means there's one kink in it. And so now you have, but then polyunsaturated fat is multiple kinks. And my guess and my professional guess as to why coconut oil is such an effective treatment, you mentioned the hydration, that's definitely key. However, it's literally providing the components to rebuilding the skin that is necessary to kind of help slough off or deal or treat the
sensitivity almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
I mean, you're made of fat, and so
Well,
you're
right.
you're literally providing the scaffolding to the skin cells that are currently, but then the steroid goes into the cells and calms down the over development of it. And
So could like certain ingredients detoxify or not detox, like break down your skin cells and make you more sensitive?
yeah,
Like
and there
maybe
could be an allergy.
something I'm using like broke down those cells and now I'm allergic to it.
Yeah, possibly.
It could be. Over time, you could get a hypersensitivity reaction where your immune system decides that this is not something that it wants to deal with, and it could send immune cells to that area, and you could start getting a rash because of that.
Well, my doctor was saying it could go because of my hormonal changes. So if I'm like hormonal and my skin like it, sorry, I'm a woman.
No, don't apologize.
So
This
then
is
my
the day
immune
that Katie
system-
just apologized for being a woman.
No, not
You want to
really.
get a time on that? No, just kidding.
So like she was saying that I become sensitive in my hormonal stages.
Yeah, I mean, that's getting into.
I'm sitting in a room with 3 men. Like
Everyone
come
keep
on.
a straight face now.
Bitches be crazy.
I find it. Listen,
Oh, no.
I've had eczema issues. If I didn't use coconut oil as instead of like a lotion, like some people apply like a Minorin or a Eucerin or some type of they call it a hydrating lotion.
Yeah.
I just prefer to use coconut oil because
A lot of people do, especially like organic.
exactly. Yeah, I go to Costco and I get the fucking the
Big ass bottle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I call it 1 fuck ton. That's what I refer to it as.
Yeah,
And
that's
Welcome
a good.
to
That's a
Costco.
it costs
good
like $9.
unit of
Yeah,
measurement.
It's
I like
a really
that
good
one.
deal.
Absolutely, and it's you mentioned organic is that's a whole nother topic for another day, but I just find it miraculous, really, and
Yeah.
I mean if I ever have any issue, if I didn't use coconut oil on a daily basis, it would look like I have lupus or just tremendous eczema that would it looked like I had a staph infection. In fact, I got to the point where I did think I had a staph infection. And so I went to the doctor and I think it ended up being anxiety. But so we talked about the placebo effect. Your body, when people have certain types of anxiety, I've had such bad anxiety where my body in a placebo effect like way has tricked myself into thinking that I'm having a heart attack. I'll experience pain in my jaw, tightness in my shoulder. And I'm thinking, holy fuck, I'm having a heart attack. I was 20 something at the time, and it's unbelievable how it can work against you as well. So
It's the stress.
I would have been
fucking
embarrassed
job,
to
I'm
say it
telling ya.
without a couple beers in me, but I've actually gone to the emergency room for a panic attack
I have
that
too.
I thought could have been a heart attack. And
I went to the walk-in for one.
Looked at just
way to
last
be,
night.
Luke, for not actually creating such a
No, I did not go to the
strenuous drain on our healthcare system as I did.
I did not go to the ER. I went to the walk-in.
We just didn't want to pay.
I paid a bunch for it because they made me go talk to somebody in quotes that had some mental health psyche shit. Yeah, it was fine. I was just like, I know what I'm here for. I need a pill. I need Xanax or Klonopin, whichever one you want to give me, and they did after about 20 minutes.
nice.
So it was fine.
Oh, benzodiazepines.
I would way rather be on Xanax than Klonopin. They gave me Klonopin.
Well,
So, in your professional experience, what is the difference between Xanax and Klonopin, and why would someone experience maybe, I don't know if this is not really a medical term, but maybe a weirder experience when they take Klonopin than a more calming effect of Xanax?
Well, they're both benzodiazepines.
Right.
So, they exhibit different. When you take a drug, right, it can either last for 4 hours, it can last for 12 hours, it can last for 24 hours. Klonopin and Xanax also technically have different therapeutic uses as well. And it's difficult to describe.
Who do you give to what? I mean, what type of personality do you give a Xanax versus what type of person? Like, what are the symptoms someone would be having to get one or the other?
I think you might be also looking at like onset of action. It might be provider experience. They may just have more experience giving, diagnosing a panic attack and going
Are
having
they
more
made by different drug companies?
Yes,
'Cause
they
it could
are,
be
yeah.
whoever pays more to the doctor.
Yeah,
Get them to prescribe
whose
it.
drug rep made the rounds or sooner,
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
who
the
paid for
steak
the ski
dinners.
trip to
Exactly,
Aspen
steak
this year?
dinners, yeah.
So are you saying Klonopin and Xanax do the exact same thing?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, but they are both
similar.
They are both benzodiazepines. They both have the same mechanism of action. They also have a similar, but they vary in a lot of different aspects. A lot of people, it's difficult to say, to describe all the factors that might lead to, but I have to the differences. But I would say that they're fairly similar.
So here, let me do this for you then. With someone with zero education on it and a similar dose on each pill, Xanax, I felt like I could still generally live my life throughout the day with a lot better mood. Klonopin, it was like, okay, I'm going to feel better, but I'm also going to take a nap on the couch right now.
Oh, he's a zombie on Klonopin.
Yeah. So that might be so that might go into metabolism and the eventual concentration. Maybe it was just the wrong dose. Essentially, when you take a drug, there are some drugs that are considered what are called prodrugs. And so what you initially ingest is not what exhibits the pharmacologic effect. And that's depending on how your liver metabolizes it. And so a perfect example that I can provide more details on is like the difference between taking morphine and codeine. So morphine is what is extracted from the poppy seed and is kind of the gold standard opioid that is used for various different types of pain. But when you take codeine, right? Codeine is a prodrug in that when you take it, it's actually metabolized to morphine, which has the pharmacological effect. So you don't get anything from codeine. So now, because you depend on its conversion to morphine. So when, if you are, and that is primarily when it gets metabolized by the liver, passes through an enzyme called CYP2D6. And you can be one of three different types of metabolizers of CYP2D6. You can be a normal metabolizer, which would exhibit normal concentrations of morphine reaching the blood and it having the desired effect, whether it's pain control or anti-cough. You could be a poor metabolizer, which would lead to higher concentrations of codeine, more drowsiness, less pain control, cough suppression. Or you could be a rapid metabolizer, which could lead to oversedation and then risk of coma and death.
Okay.
So
I got a
respiratory
inhibition
doing that.
with Xanax and Klonopin.
Okay.
That
we're
could
going back there, yeah.
that could be a similar issue.
Yes.
You could have metabolism issues that lead to different effects of it reaching its intended target and different effects. So
can you get tested like in your blood work to figure out how much you should be taking of one of those pills and what would actually help? Like, can you take a lower dosage for
they're not going to do blood work to do any of that.
Or like,
this is going to require you reporting back to your doctor saying, here's how this dose made me feel.
Absolutely.
And they will adjust it.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think,
especially on like the anything
so
that's trying to
back and gotten more for lower dose.
I wanted to switch. I know I never wanted to be on Klonopin. All I want is a doctor to write me a prescription for Xanax where I can keep 30 on deck and be good to go.
Well, what's the difference?
I wouldn't take them.
Your target receptors could have a different affinity for one substance or the other. So,
can we go back to opioids though?
Yeah, sure.
Because I can't let you get in here and leave without like, what are your thoughts on what looked like from the outside as like a nationwide overprescription of opiates?
Yeah.
And
Actually,
do you want to just like say like it led to what may be a heroin epidemic? Because it looks like that.
Absolutely. So I actually just watched a documentary. Well, when I was in pharmacy school, I worked for QFC. And during our every year, they had a conference where the pharmacy managers and the interns would go to. We actually went to the Boeing Museum of Flight, and we had a presenter, and we would look at all different types of topics and things like that. One of the topics that year, which would have been 2012, 2013, it was relayed to us that there was an opioid crisis in the state of Florida.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is that there was just the state of Florida, by just an incredible amount, was prescribing. The providers there were prescribing absurd amounts of oxycodone, and
aging population. I mean, was that the majority of it?
I feel like some of it was an aging population, and some of it was possibly manufacturer kickbacks for the amount that was being prescribed.
Yeah.
You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, remember we were talking about this earlier. They used to prescribe, doctors in the early 1900s used to prescribe heroin for little babies to either help with sleeping issues or, new teeth.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that goes into...
How long ago was that?
Probably early 1900s, maybe 1900s, 1910s.
Yeah,
possibly even into the 20s.
Ago.
I'd have to look it up.
But you can find heroin in the old Sears catalog. I've seen pictures of heroin in Sears catalog.
And that was just before we understood that it was just absolutely terrible.
Highly addictive, probably over suppressive of the respiratory system in relation to its ability to reduce pain.
Correct.
Yeah. What we will see at the end of our lives will be funny, where it's like, oh shit, we all did this, no problem.
Has there
back
been
in 2020, and we can't do it in 2060? It'll happen.
Has there been a? There have been providers who have been indicted on criminal charges of malpractice and overprescribing. Absolutely, that's happened. And so, but the problem is, and I've heard this from multiple different pharmacists. I spent time working at the WCU Health and Wellness Center, and I worked under a man named Mike Coe there, and he said the same thing that I've heard reiterated by multiple different people throughout the industry, and that is we do not know how to control pain. And the only thing we have usually is those opioids. And so they work great because they not only block the physical pain, they block the emotional pain that is associated with the experience. And so those both go out of the window and you experience euphoria, which is what leads to the addiction. And when I recently watched a documentary called The Pharmacist, and I was like, okay, I gotta see this shit. I gotta see what's going on.
It's talking about you. Better watch it.
Exactly. And there was the makers of OxyContin, okay, which is extended release oxycodone, which is a synthetic opioid derived from morphine, right? They literally were marketing it as completely safe and less addictive than immediate release oxycodone. what? And doctors were literally, putting their professional opinion and on the line and saying these things to convince the general public that it was in fact safe. But then it turned out, I lost my mic.
Me too. Sorry.
Oh.
I was trying to give him more space.
All good. We just had a little headphone amplifier, and we're back. Hey.
Sorry, I was trying to give you more space.
No
in
worries.
Your headphones.
No, you're good.
I didn't think I was gonna fuck it
something
up.
that reminds me of putting their professional opinions on the line like that is if you look back to like the 60s and maybe early 70s, back when you used to see cigarette commercials with doctors advocating this brand of cigarettes is what I smoke. This is more healthy for you. This will be better. My parents who work in the healthcare industry actually tell a story of a doctor who used to roam up and down the halls of the hospital here smoking a pipe. And he just used to smoke a pipe on rounds and puff his tobacco, and it didn't really alarm patients. And then once the Surgeon General's warnings started coming out, and they started doing studies, realizing how bad tobacco is for you in the long term and the negative health consequences that could come for it. You stopped seeing that. You don't see cigarette commercials on TV anymore. The Marlboro Man isn't a thing.
But it's being addictive and trying to get you to stop.
Right. You see the opposite. Hey, we'll get you to stop smoking with Chantix, varenicline.
Yep. And the high-powered attorneys from the tobacco companies would fight in courts tooth and nail against the claims that tobacco was in fact harmful, cancer causing. My goodness. And so, but the same thing was going on. That actually goes next along the lines with another point on that I had written down previously, which is the labeling of certain products, right? Mm-hmm. And so, snake oil, right, is another interesting concept where, back in the day before a drug company had to prove that their drug was safe and effective, they could literally, they used to make these tall, thin bottles that would say, it cures this, and all the way down. And it's or they would say cure all on it. And it would say Dr. Smith's cure all. And then they would say what it treats. But it could be nothing in the bottle. And they would distribute it. And you would get the placebo effect. And some people, there was no repercussions. And so,
because someone's always going to swear by it just based on the
exactly,
placebo effect.
Which is anecdotal, as opposed to going back to proving via biostatistics an actual change in disease state, in terms of efficacy, and also proving that it's not killing people. So,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's to say there is dentists. And I'm not. There's nothing against dentists. Don't prescribe oxy like they used to.
No.
And if you had a legitimate tooth extraction that required an invasive procedure, they had a legitimate reason to.
I got it.
Yeah.
Wisdom teeth.
Oh yeah.
When
I had wisdom teeth, I had whatever I had as anesthesia, and then took a Vicodin and was zonked for a day and a half. Took a nap.
Oxycodone.
Yeah.
I had Oxy.
Right.
2 days.
I had my wisdom
depressed as shit.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I got off it. I was like, I don't care if I'm in pain. I'll take ibuprofen. I don't care. But I was in the dumps 2 days.
Yeah, surgeries that I've had on my eyes since then, I haven't taken. I was in a suggestive state post-surgery due to anesthesia, so I took one Vicodin after the first one, and it made me an asshole, and so I didn't take any more of them, and I took, it probably gave me what would be known as psychological license to feel like I could be an asshole, which was enough at the time. So I fought the pain with just Tylenol after that, and watched the doses of it, made sure I wasn't going to potentially cause liver damage, and just toughed it out, I guess.
Nowadays, dentists don't do anything. If you get even the most invasive tooth extraction, you're getting ibuprofen and Tylenol. That's it.
Yeah.
And
probably because the addictive behavior coming off of those.
Yeah.
From after that stuff.
Exactly. It's it can be one dose. I had 3 wisdom teeth taken out. They gave me 16 Percocet. I needed 1. I didn't even need 1. You know what I mean? Like, I took it just because I was in pain and they said I could. But after I took it, I was like, I don't need this. You know what I'm saying? And so now these prescribers are realizing or I'm going back to that pharmacist documentary.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were and actually in right before I graduated, we had a former DEA agent come and describe and educate us on diversion, right? So the most fascinating thing that he shared with us is that in the great state of Kansas are fields of poppy seeds that pharmaceutical
opium poppy.
Exactly. Opium, right? And so there used to be some countries use opium tincture as instead of which is morphine essentially, and so there's the way I can describe it. There's opiates which are naturally derived from the poppy seed and not really synthetically manipulated, but once you start to introduce the synthetic manipulation, you get opioids, and that's where your oxycodons, your hydrocodons, your hydromorphones, your oxymorphones, and what killed Prince, fentanyl, and then meperidine. You start to branch off into those. I could go on about fentanyl, but now this gentleman said that the pharmaceutical companies have the right to grow these like corn-like sized fields of poppy seeds to produce the necessary opiates they need to create all the oxycodone and what happens is from the growth process to the synthetic derivation to the necessary opiates to the distribution to the patients. Diversion is when that gets stolen and then taken out of that process, out of the medicinal process, and used for drug abuse. And so he described situations where providers were these old people that lived in skilled nursing facilities or assisted living facilities. These drug dealers would pick them all up and get them prescriptions, and then one by one in a large van drop them off at your local neighborhood pharmacy. These are old elderly people. Would pay them, and they would get these massive prescriptions. Like I've seen 500 counts of Percocet 10-325. And then I would open drawers full of OxyContin. This was in like a small independent pharmacy. And
wow.
It was stocked and they didn't keep any track of, you're supposed to like double count and log, and it's just like, it's supposed to be controlled. And there are so many independent pharmacies out there that do not do that. And so
That's
the diversion,
wild.
it's
That's
scary.
Insane.
In this documentary that I watched, there was a provider that they targeted who was literally and this agent spoke of the same kind of thing. This doctor would literally have people lined up around his block, and he would just come in and he'd say what you want, and then he'd write it and hand it to him, and they'd be lived. You want 360 Oxy 30? You got it. Here you go. Get the fuck out of here. $200. Have a nice day. And then people
was this in Florida?
This was in Seattle.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah, in the 80s and 90s. Yeah,
That's close to home, man.
Okay,
yep.
wait.
And he got in line and then got his own prescription. Yeah, it's but that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it could, but this was what was happening in Florida. This is what I mean.
Well, the whole pain clinic
Yes.
thing, right?
Yeah.
There was there was a pain clinic boom, and you went there, but you probably went to 3 that day. I say anecdotally again, but
exactly.
there's
No, you
people
did. Doctor
who
shopping.
went to
It's called doctor
3.
shopping.
Yep.
Is that why we have such a problem today?
That's what the guess is.
You create the addiction and then now the tolerance level. And when you start removing,
Could I go tinfoil hat? And were there like any pharmaceuticals that had any interest in South America as far as land went and started sending heroin up also? Could we get there? 'Cause that it could happen.
Well, that's what they used to once those prescriptions stopped getting prescribed.
Right.
You have a deficit, and so what did people start going to?
They went to the street to get heroin, especially if you're addicted.
So
but
that's what
I mean,
happened.
Could there
Really,
have been?
if you really want to go tinfoil hat,
Yeah, could there
some
have
people
been-
talk about the fact that we have been in Afghanistan so
Right.
long is due to the
Yes.
fact
'Cause of
that
the
there
poppy
are
seeds.
large
Major-
poppy fields there,
They have
and you
U.S.
hear
military guarding.
Yep, yeah, I was just gonna say you hear stories of soldiers
Wait,
guarding the poppy
So
fields.
is this what came out on the news a few years ago, where like the companies were like so big right now and they were overproducing? That's all they're trying to prescribe is opioids.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm trying to remember the name of the company that produces. Purdue Pharmaceuticals is the one that produces.
They went
brand name OxyContin, and they've gotten
I'm gonna
sued into
excuse myself.
oblivion.
What would be really insane is if you could actually find a link between one of those companies and a foreign interest that was related to drugs.
I mean, I don't have any proof of that, but
I
wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's not outside of the realm of possibility.
Absolutely not. I mean, we haven't gotten into cocaine or marijuana or anything like that.
Yeah, cocaine's got to be one of the as far as human rights go, one of the ugliest ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the
Hundreds of thousands.
country of Colombia is still probably decimated in a third world country due to sending much of their possible economic production north as cocaine to the United States.
Well, right, and if your country's GDP is dependent on a drug lord, I mean, the money eventually gets redistributed, but that's an ugly way to get money from foreign countries, right? As if all you're doing is sending drugs. Yeah, the money comes back eventually, but it goes through a lot of different facets on the way.
Yeah.
Very many middlemen.
These days, I would say that it has dramatically decreased, but the problem is now you create a void, and which leads to withdrawal and the desire to go after other substances. And right now, as it stands, there is no proven way to wean somebody off of opioids.
Yeah, and I would say like the Suboxone route and all of that. Do you have any faith in that? Do those work?
I've dispensed a tremendous amount of Suboxone, and
don't people just get hooked on it? Isn't it the same thing?
It's so Suboxone has buprenorphine along with naloxone.
Yeah.
So it's a combination product. Oftentimes, it is it's a sublingual film or a sublingual tablet.
I've seen them. I've seen them before.
I think of it as almost like modern day methadone in terms of the
methadone's an alternative.
People. Sure, and I just mean the volume of people that use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. A lot of people are instead of injecting heroin, they now take methadone or Suboxone, and so
lesser of two evils.
Right. So, but now that again, the magic bullet. There is no magic bullet for opioid addiction. Right now, some people go cold turkey, and they're able to just quit it and then live their normal lives without relapse. You know, and some people eventually. I mean, it's. How do I want to say this? You can't. There's no proven way to go with somebody who has an opioid addiction to just off and on nothing.
Right.
Right.
Nope.
But now this is where and I wrote this down, the medicine as a risk versus benefit. Okay. And the forms that medicine take. You can have somebody who uses or not uses but takes these Suboxones to prevent them from injecting heroin, and that in my opinion is a form of medicine, and because of the risks associated with injecting heroin, right? Right. So you have heroin users that literally will exacerbate every possible vein that they can inject. And oftentimes that can lead to infection. If you are injecting in one side of your arm versus your other, it can lead to endocarditis, which can hospitalize you. You can get what's called oh my gosh.
How does a diabetic avoid it if they have to inject that often?
Most of those diabetic injections are going to be subcutaneous rather than intravenous, correct?
Yes, and that's usually in the tissue of the abdomen. Now, I would say that
belly fat.
I would say that diabetics are more susceptible because they are oftentimes uncontrolled, and if they are in a state of immunocompromisation.
I was wondering because that's someone who would have to give themselves an injection as often as someone who's on heroin.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Diabetic injections of insulin are subcutaneous. So Brian mentioned subcutaneous. So what that means is you're not entering into a blood vessel.
Okay. You just got to get it under.
Exactly. Well, you're putting it into the a certain depth within, because your skin cells are multiple different layers of fat. And the needle is only so long,
right?
And then that insulin sits in there, and then eventually gets absorbed into the bloodstream, but just not directly into a blood vessel. So,
right.
But that being said, you have an uncontrolled diabetic; they are now immunocompromised and more susceptible to the infections associated with
Interesting.
it. So there are a lot of people are very against sites where you can actually go and use heroin.
Right, needle exchange sites.
There's
those
needle
kind of
exchange,
things.
but they also have
safe injection zones
right.
is
That's what I
a
should have been
newer
thinking of.
concept.
right. And I believe, I mean, again, it's ideally you would want to, if you have a patient with a certain tolerance, you would want them to slowly wean off until they no longer need the drug. In addition to just switching over to an alternative substance that prevents the craving. So the medicine with Suboxone and methadone is preventing the craving, and all the
By getting you high, though. I mean, ultimately, you're
satisfying the opiate addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a buprenorphine, but it also has naloxone, which is an opioid agonist. So, what did I say? Agonist? My goodness, antagonist. It's the pharmacology behind the relationship between both the substances. So buprenorphine is the opioid agonist, which satisfies the craving, but the naloxone, thank you, Brian, it is in a fixed ratio in comparison to the buprenorphine.
Yeah.
And then that exhibits a pharmacological effect that affects craving. I would have to definitely delve into that to review that off the top of my head. But naloxone by itself is what actually has saved the lives of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, because it is directly blocks the opioid. If somebody's overdosing,
is that Narcan?
Narcan, that's it. Yep, very good. Yep.
Okay. I was gonna ask you about that next anyway. So
it's remarkable. I mean, you know what? It doesn't. The only thing that it does, I would say that Narcan is a magic bullet, because if you can inject somebody with as much Narcan as possible, and they'll never overdose on it.
Right.
But the only thing that it will do is it'll reverse opioid overdose, put somebody into withdrawal, but it'll save their life, because the opioids, if you are overdosing it, so like when you have a sedative, you have, depending on the dose, it is a range of pharmacological effects.
Sure.
You have sedation, hypnosis, which is putting someone to sleep. You have anesthesia, coma, respiratory failure, death. So it depending on the dose, so it takes you out of the respiratory failure, coma, puts you into anesthesia, eventually gets you back to sedation and wakes you up. Now you will be within withdrawal. You will be within withdrawal
immediately,
but you will be alive. And so when I have to dispense Narcan, oftentimes the things that I have to say is,
do people who use heroin frequently, does the smart heroin user go get some?
Oftentimes
to have for themselves.
Oftentimes it is co-administered as part of a protocol with any type of opiates or Suboxone, morphine. And so when I counsel on Narcan, I have to say, even though this is for you, you're not going to be administering it. That's what I have to tell them.
Yeah.
And so what then the counseling point becomes is that you have to let your family or your friends or your loved ones, they have to know how to administer this.
Right.
If it's ever needed.
Okay, wait. So is Narcan prescribed?
Absolutely. It's a prescription only, yeah.
And you carry it on you?
Yeah. It
used to come in EpiPen. It's the
an
EpiPen of
of
heroin use.
allergy?
No,
Exactly.
it's not the exact same thing. But if you
that's what I'm saying.
if
It's
you're
like-
an opioid user and you're not an idiot, you should have some.
Yeah.
And who?
So why would it?
It
So
blocks,
why do people prescribe it? Why? Like, no offense, but like, if they're gonna continue to try to get it prescribed,
it brings back
then they're just
brings
being abusers.
it brings people back to life.
you get another chance.
Right. So what you're looking at is an avenue of least harm. You would rather give them a second chance to be alive.
Okay, but how
than
many
you
times
would.
can you have it prescribed?
Many times as you
There's
need
an
it.
unlimited amount.
In
There's
fact, the
not a
state of
limit on
Washington
it.
has there is a statewide prescriptive authority for pharmacies to dispense it. Oh gosh, it was so in downtown Seattle. There's Kelly Ross, and they I'll have to look into the details, but you can. When I was in pharmacy school, they gave us Narcan prescriptions to give to people. who may or may not need it.
Now,
like
if
you
you're
literally could
talking-
just hand it to someone you thought needed it.
So, and what we mean by
Or use it?
prescriptive,
Yeah.
what we mean by prescriptive authority is usually as a pharmacist, you need a prescription from a doctor to be able to dispense a drug. What
Yep.
prescriptive authority means is that you are able to prescribe that drug to a patient or a potential patient yourself without needing a prescription from an MD first.
Are
Exact-
you that? Can you do that?
I mean, I would have to have a wholesaler account
Oh.
to purchase it.
Not that I need anything right now. I was just asking.
No,
But-
we're not much of opioid users, but if you
If
see
I just think
you are a
someone,
that
licensed
should
pharmacy
only be
that-
like you should only be prescribed so many times on it. No
if you
offense,
see
but,
someone,
like,
no, if you see someone who is overdosing on the street, I would say 90% of those people are going to have Narcan administered by an
I know, I'm
EMS
just
person.
saying,
Someone,
like, to
it's
get
going to
it
be a
prescribed that many
911
times.
call.
I would
like,
say
I'm not gonna get like for my pain oxy prescribed every 2 weeks or something.
I would say that you so my cousin, he works at a Yolks over in Spokane, and outside his pharmacy it says Narcan dispensing pharmacy, and so he has the statewide granted prescriptive authority. He has an account with a wholesaler that allows him, and he has prescriptive authority by the state to prescribe, bill, and dispense Narcan to people who request it or he believes that need it. Because
Without a doctor.
yes.
So
you-
here's what
if
Katie's
you feel like-
angling
yeah.
at.
No, we
is-
don't have to go into.
No,
my
I
angle.
want to. I mean, I will take a similar line of questioning, but does that enable people to use opiates beyond reason? I mean, does that make the problem worse?
that is a conundrum.
You know what I mean? Like I get
it's
not
like,
wanting
oh,
people
okay,
to
I'm
die.
gonna go overdose, but I'm gonna go get a Narcan just so I don't die.
Exactly.
Like, right?
Now, so overdose is a phenomenal concept that because normally users they know the dose that they need, but that won't cause an overdose. But there is often a change in the setting. A man by the name of John Davis, who is a professor at WSU, he argues for what truly leads to overdose. And it could be somebody who maybe goes without it for a while, and they go back to their normal dose without weaning back up to it. That could potentially lead to it. But there's many other factors that could potentially lead to an overdose. And it could be the inconsistency of the product that they're buying, right? You could have a heroin distributor who decides to put in fentanyl in their product to spike it, right? And then which would potentially lead to the overdose. I mean, when you buy heroin, it's not the quantity and the dose that you're getting is not regulated and it's not consistent. That could be an issue. You could have somebody who wants to commit suicide or buy overdose. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it that could potentially lead to it. And I wish he was here right now because the way he explained it was it had something to do with setting and almost a microscopic internal body mechanism that could potentially lead to the overdose. And there's more than one way.
I'd love to
explain it.
interrupt and say that to disconnect mental health with physical drug addiction on something like opiates is impossible to do. So when you mention suicide, like the fact is like the physical addiction on like most recreational drugs is actually pretty small, right? And I think the root problem on most addictions is a mental state. You have a brain health issue. Right. So
Are you agreeing with is that
well, there's
like a thing?
you're exactly right. If I remember, Dr.
Sorry, not to discredit
no, that's
you.
fine.
No. There's only two known substances that cause physical addiction, and that is alcohol and barbiturates.
Yep.
Outside of that, there is nothing else that causes a physical addiction where if you are not weaned off of it, so if you are an alcoholic, you have to be physically weaned off of alcohol.
Yes.
Otherwise, seizures can invoke. You can lead to, and it could cause death due to that. Barbiturates are the same way.
Yep. I forget which Nordic country it was, but there was somewhere that was It might have been Sweden. I'm going to say Sweden. Anyway, it was free heroin for their addicts at a specific location. It had to come with counseling, and their rate of success was like in the 70s, I believe.
Complete freedom of.
Yeah. So it was shit. I think it was the Swiss.
I'll look it up.
Go ahead. I'm repeating a Joe Rogan podcast right now, but it was come in, get your heroin. You had to be there early in the morning. You took it there. You hung out there. Mm-hmm. You didn't get to go anywhere, so they weren't like feeding the social side of an addiction. Which, as someone who has had probably some decent drug addiction, at least things I could point to in my life, a lot of it is just like, hey, this is what I do. I fuck around all day. We do this drug, this drug, this drug, and this is part of your day. But they would take you in. You would do the drug there. You didn't just leave, and there was an actual counseling, psychological side of the whole thing where you would sit and meet with someone. Their success rate was huge. Mm-hmm. Brian's
according to an article in The Guardian from August 10th, 2018, it was Norway that trialed free heroin prescriptions for their most serious addicts. Norway trialed, I said that. So let me click into this. So the project aimed to improve quality of life and reduce fatal overdose rates. And according to the health minister, this is a direct quote from him, "We hope that this will provide a solution that will give a better quality of life to some addicts who are today out of our reach and whom current programs do not help enough." Norway had one of the highest overdose mortality rates in Europe, with 81 deaths per million in 2015. And that's only below Estonia and Sweden. Estonia being 132 deaths per million and Sweden being 88 deaths per million.
That's
yikes.
low, right?
No, that's the Swedes. The Swedes, and that's who I was talking about. I don't know. I'll find the podcast. I'll put it in the show notes. I won't do that. Brian will do both of those things for me.
I'll do both of those. Yep,
and they'll be in the show notes. But it was a really interesting, and it was. Here's the deal. I, as someone who has quit a lot of drug use cold turkey with no assistance, including any of the big ones that I've tried at least. It just leads me to believe that I think a lot of the problems are mental. If free mental health to people who are having real, I think you got to do a cost analysis, right?
I think you also have to do analysis on who you are as a person.
Totally.
Yeah.
So if you do a cost analysis, is it best to give these people something that is not pharmaceutical, that is entirely a mental health sort of someone to talk to?
Right, counseling.
Psychological, yeah.
What if you gave them the placebo effect and said, "This is heroin"?
They would go into withdrawal.
Yeah, they would go into withdrawals
because your body is like not producing or whatever.
How long?
It's not
would
getting,
they make
it's not
it a
getting
day or
the
two? Is there any placebo effect on that?
Possibly, but
I think they'd figure it out.
The opiate receptors are not being.
That's
activated.
a real one. The opiate thing is a real physical withdrawal,
right? Because you have
not.
It's not a fatal, potentially fatal physical withdrawal, but they are going to experience physical symptoms.
Correct. Which, again, so when you take an opioid or an opioid, you are blocking the emotional aspects of the pain as well as the physical aspects. Right. So we have nerves that are again, I wish Dr. Kwok was here right now, but it is a 3-pronged pathway of how pain operates in your body. Okay, you have all these. Now you have receptors. All like as I'm drawing my finger across my hand, right? I can feel that, right? And so what's really happening is that a signal is being sent all the way up to my brain. My brain is interpreting the signal, and then there is a relay signal going back to that sensation, and
it's electricity.
It's
anyone who's wired a house. That's the same thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Chemical plus electrical.
Mm-hmm.
So you literally have what happens is that the opioids block the response so they you're still getting the pain signal and your brain's still interpreting, but there's no relay back to the source. So what I counsel my patients on is when you take this, if you've been in a car accident or you have severe pain and you require an opiate or you're being prescribed an opiate for your pain or an opioid, what I tell them is that you are going to still be in pain. You're just not going to give a fuck. I obviously don't use that language, but you're just not going to care. I say
there could be some success on that. That language would probably resonate with a lot of people.
Some people are going to get it for sure.
Exactly, yeah. But you're not going to care. And so,
beers.
Thank you. Yes,
cheers for beers.
Cheers for beers. So that response, that third prong to the pain is also emotional too, because it numbs you. Because when one of the most fascinating things about pain. Yes, please. Thank you. You ever heard of phantom limb syndrome? Limb syndrome.
Yeah,
okay?
Amputated and you still feel a leg or whatever, right?
That's what we're at. You still feel pain in the limb that is not there. Right? There is an emotional aspect to that as well. And so people get depressed when they are in severe pain. And that is also blocked by the opiate.
Interesting.
And so you bring up the mental health aspect of it. That is that numbing, or that literally, it's that aspect of it too. So
it would be, and this would be a study that would probably be impossible. But if you were to really get down to the psychological side of our opioid epidemic, as far as heroin goes, I don't think there's anyone who is addicted to heroin living on the streets in Seattle that does not have a massive mental health trauma issue somewhere in their life.
I think
I'm not saying it's all of them, but it's got to be most of them.
Yeah. They want that pain to go away.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where as far as resources go,
opioids
I hope
do
they I get as when
they're very good at
looking for a chemical, it's perfect. It's probably the perfect one. It's not sustainable. It's going to kill people. It's going to take a massive impact on our state as far as living as anyone who isn't dealing. It is a problem, right? Because it leads to other things socially, having that sort of population.
I would say
and what's the most moral approach to dealing with it? Because and you're going to throw money at a problem no matter what. And we'll just call it a problem. So you're going to throw money at a problem no matter what. Arresting out of it is difficult or impossible. And so then it's just, what do you do?
I think it goes back to we don't know yet.
Yeah. I don't think anyone does. Everyone's had ideas.
There are promising results with those studies like that. I am a proponent of these heroin clinics where you can go, and hopefully the concept is that whatever dose you're using the heroin at, you can go to these clinics, and then they can find out what dose you're on.
Yes,
and that
and give you a little less each time. I'm not anti that. I would like to see a real thing, and if it takes heroin to get you off of heroin, there has to be legitimate counseling along with it. Whether it's got to be from a psychologist.
It's at least two prongs.
And I guess as I think about it, if you're gonna pay for it no matter what, it seems like what you're gonna pay to arrest your way out of it is gonna be similar to what you're gonna pay. Yeah. To do it a different way. I just want whatever's effective. That's my main thing.
It's sort of a controversial possibility for treating opioid addiction, but there's a plant substance out of Africa, and it's called ibogaine. And I believe the active drug is harmaline. I'm probably wrong about that. But ibogaine has been used, and I believe that the organization that has done some of the studies is MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They've looked at possible medical treatment for opioid addiction using ibogaine, and it's seen good results in being able to get people off of a heroin
There's
or an
nothing in this
OxyContin
country.
situation.
Is there? You have to go to Mexico right now?
I believe you do. Somewhere
C1.
outside of the United States. But one of the things that is a risk with ibogaine therapy, and probably one of the reasons that the FDA hasn't approved possible treatment studies with it here, is that there can be complications with ibogaine that include seizures, gastrointestinal issues, heart complications such as arrhythmias and ataxia, which, can you define ataxia for us real quick? I put you on the spot. I'm sorry, Vince.
Well, it's without shit.
We're Googling
I got
that
you.
one.
I got
Google
you.
it. Google it.
So ataxia is impaired coordination or balance, and it can be due to like an impairment in your brain and your nervous system. And ataxia can be something that can be as like a genetic condition, can happen as a result of damage to your spinal cord in like a traumatic accident, a car accident, or something like that. You can notice a symptom of ataxia. But I think
ibogaine's not hallucinogenic.
No, it is. It can
is.
be at I think at higher doses it is.
Okay, I was wondering if it was in that family, but
similar to.
It's
DMT.
not ayahuasca. It is similar.
Similar.
Yeah.
I don't
believe it is. Let me hang on just 2 seconds here.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's
there's a lot of I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of times in this podcast that I will say that. I get a lot of things backward.
No, you're great.
But from what I understand, it is similar. I mean, are you going to see things on ibogaine? Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's.
Are you going to go places?
Where you get it from is the iboga tree, which is first discovered by pygmy tribes in Central Africa. So the difference between that locationally and what you'd find with ayahuasca is ayahuasca you're going to find in the Amazon.
Than physical though.
Yeah, it exactly. So it's treating some of the psychological addiction that you would have to it, and some of the emotional trauma that might cause you to use opioids chronically to try to suppress that feeling of depression or emotional issues.
Most of the addiction. I've been tooting that horn for a second, but I'm just saying there's a decent chance that that's a lot of addiction right there.
The magic bullet for heroin addiction is eventually, a magic bullet is you give somebody a substance that has a problem, and then after that, they no longer have a problem ever again. Ibogaine is, in comparison to the Suboxone and the methadones, I have seen people on long-term methadone therapy have incredible success. And so, but, in my mind, switching somebody from one substance to another, that's okay. Is that the best? I don't think so. A lot of people who have, reported taking this ibogaine will go and they'll have this experience. They say they go with a shaman, and then they take this and then they're done. So by definition, whether or not it truly works or not, that's more of a magic bullet. But I think the best solution is eventually being weaned off of it and developing coping habits and not requiring the drug.
Sure.
But again, medicine has taken the form of, okay, let us give you something that can calm your cravings, satisfy your cravings, but not lead to the injections and all the risk benefits. I mean, we're talking HIV, hepatitis C.
Yeah, no, there's major problems.
Infection. So those are the three things that you will not get if you're taking a tablet sublingually, you're taking it by mouth, or a film under the tongue. And so again, it is a small step, not necessarily to cure, but that's just sometimes how medicine takes shape. And I think that is a better outcome. I mean, it just leads to better outcomes.
Totally.
And so, but if you can really go and do ibogaine and then not feel the craving to ever want to do heroin again, that's pretty fantastic. Whether or not that's been proven, right now it's anecdotal.
Yeah. And hopefully there can be, if I think there's huge merit to being able to open up avenues in our country to explore something like ibogaine. I know that people have looked at Molly, MDMA as treatments for PTSD.
Yep.
I know mushrooms are getting looked at, psilocybin as being cures
Yep.
what may be ultimately psychological issues. So I hope that our country is continuing to be more interested in exploring those sorts of avenues.
Absolutely.
I'm pausing us. Here we
No,
go.
hey, let's take a break.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come up and wrap this thing up.
Absolutely.
If you're still listening to this podcast, awesome.
Thanks,
Boom.
guys.
We're
We'll be back.
We're way over 2 hours. I'm excited. Okay, well, I'll have Brian cut it out. Katie says pause it.
Editing. It's an important step in the process.
Just coil around the cross and then slither all the way down. I was like, holy fuck, what the hell's going on? And then I went and I looked at the side effects of cetirizine, and it said 5% of people experience hallucinations.
Oh no. Crazy.
I'm not taking cetirizine anymore.
Yeah. Benadryl makes me sleepy. I started, for when I started having my face problems, I started taking the non-drowsy allergy pill.
Claritin?
No.
Allegra?
No.
Zyrtec?
I don't know. Right here.
I thought it was named brand Benadryl non-drowsy.
Loratadine? Loratadine.
Loratadine, yeah.
That's Claritin.
But it's non-drowsy.
Supposed to be. Some people do.
Is it?
This is the off-brand.
So what determines whether or not an antihistamine is going to be drowsy or non-drowsy is whether or not it crosses the blood-brain barrier, BBB.
Interesting.
And loratadine is not supposed to cross the blood-brain barrier, but some people do experience it.
Remind me, I want to show you my steroid cream too.
See, now I've never heard of any pharmacological or a pharmaceutical grade steroid containing coconut oil. Well, that's not true. Actually, I've seen several different products. In fact, the reason why is because I accidentally dispensed a cream that had coconut oil into a patient with a coconut allergy.
Oh no.
And they had to call me and say, "Hey, I have this allergy," but the system that I dispensed it in was not aware of it, so didn't catch it, so I never would have known. But so maybe there definitely are creams that have it.
Well, this one, I mean, I only got it like 2 weeks ago, but my sister, she's an MA, but she says
That one wasn't the CeraVe one. That's actually the one with the steroid in it.
Trimethylene or
I think it's
Triamcinolone.
Triamcinolone.
Oh,
yeah.
there we go.
Yep.
So the ingredient I looked at, when I was looking at the ingredients, it said coconut oil, and I was wondering why it was like so hydrating. And my sister said like, you almost need to like start using coconut oil. And I was like, oh, this cream has it. And she's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, and I'm really glad that Brian's here because he's been my safety net. I mean, how many times has he corrected me?
Only a couple of times, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes
honestly,
I wonder
there have been...
where the words come from his brain to his
Hey,
mouth.
everyone
because they're
go
pretty
listen
smart.
to episode 11.
Oh
of
God,
This
please
Probably
don't
Doesn't
do that. We'll strike that from there. No, I'm kidding.
And we can get the full record of Brian's story. It's
Boy,
fun.
but that just isn't the full record, and that's some of the
So,
hesitation
no,
that I
Vince,
have
tell me-
about episode 11 is that I don't think I did a good job comporting myself and telling the story.
That's fine. That's fine.
Comporting? Like,
Yeah.
who uses that word?
Yeah,
Not
we're
me.
gonna go.
Like,
We're
I'm
gonna go to
so,
Vince.
Like,
Vince, how do you remember Brian as when you knew him in pharmacy school?
what a good question.
I'm going to sit here quietly in the corner and smile at this.
Well, the first, I mean, Brian is just the nicest guy.
True. We're check
Yeah.
box on that. That's fine.
And when I was in Pullman, he stood out because of the hat that he wore. And I believe that we were sitting in parasitology, which is effectively a class that teaches you about, if you have undercooked meat and like parasites that literally infest you and cause disease. And so it looks at, and we sat next to each other in class, and he reached over with his right hand and said, "Hi, my name's Brian." And then it went from there. And like I said, it turned out that we lived a couple 100 yards away from each other out in apartment land over there.
Yeah.
And
It is apartment land over there.
yeah, it's massive now. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Listening, honestly, I met Brian before I got into pharmacy school. He was in pharmacy school at the time. And when I got it, so every now and then when we would hang out, he would be working on pharmacy assignments, and whether it was APC, which would have been the physical assessment class, or him just helping me with the application process, the way that Brian verbalizes his thoughts when it comes to speaking in general, and I've told him this myself, I feel he's got a voice that's made for radio, just entertainment in general.
Riddle me this. I've always thought Brian is one of the most intelligent people I know.
Yep.
If not the, but certainly one of. So I would be interested as someone who...
He was the weirdo in high school along with you.
You want to know the high school Brian?
That's fine.
The high school Brian was famous for picking up 2 studio monitors, the big speakers that you would hear yourself play an instrument through on stage. So stage monitors, I just said studio, and he would pick them up and he would walk at a 45-degree angle with those fuckers just straight across the gym. That's what I knew Brian
It's
from
unbelievable.
in high school. Yeah. Who
knew you could lift so much weight?
Yeah.
Brute,
first of all,
brute
he was
force and
walking-
determination will get you a long way if you want it
He
to.
was doing 80-something pounds right there with the 2 monitors, and the way he walked at a 45-degree angle was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I was trying not to have him take me head over heels into my face. I was trying not to face plant into the floor.
Have you heard Brian rattle off just spreadsheet amounts of data? I mean,
Have you ever watched sports with him?
Yes.
Have you watched sports with Brian?
Yes, I have.
I feel like that's
pain. It's
spreadsheets of,
I shouldn't say
like,
painful, but
God.
it's insane.
It's painful now.
I call him with my March Madness bracket because I know he can spout off all the statistics of every team for me, and I can pick my categories at that point.
Well,
Used to. Sometimes I
Okay.
still do.
Well, it is. You ever heard of what a savant is? You guys know what a savant?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
A savant is someone with a remarkable ability.
idiot savant.
Hey, if you didn't say it, I was going to,
No.
man. I had it loaded, cocked, and ready to go.
Well, I'll give you an example. So there's 2 people that come to mind when I think of what a savant is. The first one is a man by the name Jacob Green. I'll have to clarify this, but this is a young man who I remember hearing this on a podcast. Basically, he's on an episode of 60 Minutes. I'll get his name. I think it's Jacob Green. He's from the Northeast.
In case it's not, Jacob Green is also one of the great defensive ends in Seahawks history. Go Hawks.
Go. It's not Jacob Green. Fuck. It's I'll have to get his name. But this is a young man who, at the age of 2, his parents took him to a Mills music store that had instruments just strewn all about, right? And at the age of 2, he walked up to a cello and he sat down with the cello in his arms and he started to play the cello, and in perfect pitch and in perfect tune. And by the time he was 15 or 16 years old, he had composed more masterpieces than Bach and Beethoven combined.
Wow.
And so, and if you, on this 60-minute interview, if you ask him what his capability is, he says that he hears an endless stream of symphony, and which he is then able to compose not only in a traditional standpoint, but not only he can do it upside down and backwards. And so that is, in my opinion, he's receiving some kind of stream of information that he's in tune with that allows him to do this. He's now he's in his mid to late 20s. I believe he's pursuing his 2nd doctorate at Juilliard, and he has capabilities just that are beyond like explanation.
So when you say that, are you suggesting, because here's how I would hear it in my head, is that all of this, like music is one that's so specific, like we all hear it It affects us in a certain way. You know when something is flat. You know when something is sharp. If you have ears on you, maybe not everyone does.
Perfect pitch. That's called perfect pitch.
Right. But not even someone who doesn't have perfect pitch is gonna know when something sounds right or wrong just to your human brain. Right. So the way I heard you describe this gentleman in particular was that he was someone at 2 years old who was just receiving all this, who was someone who was in tune perfectly with what people hear and don't hear. Is that a way to put it?
It's almost like he's tapped
how does
into like a universal stream of musical truth that he was able to fluently
because music has
interpret
been,
at
music
a young,
has been
young age.
broken down ultimately to a science.
Yep.
There are things that sound right to your ear.
Music is math.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another example of an individual that has capabilities like this is there's a British gentleman who, without any aid of anything, was able to, by memory, recall every digit of pi 22,000 digits.
Yeah, that's insane.
I think it took him 8 hours and had a panel of judges with books that, are probably 8 inches thick, and they traced him number by number, and he was able to recall 22,000 digits. So that's a savant.
That's insane.
What I talk
For the listener at home, I don't have that ability.
That's
I have to
Just
put in a
FYI.
reminder
Does
of
it-
cook breakfast tomorrow morning.
Here's the thing. When I describe Brian as a savant when it comes to sports, is he can give you dates, times, statistics.
It is incredible.
It's
Brian, I mean, we were talking about this
immaculately
earlier.
insane.
Right. We were talking about, I had mentioned meeting Dave Wyman, who was a former outside linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. He could tell you the years that he played, the statistics that he had throughout those years, and with remarkable accuracy. He can, when it comes to the Grateful Dead, he can listen to a recording, tell you within a reasonable accuracy where that recording was taped, the date, and it's
This
just
is Brian.
This
Yeah,
is
this
Brian.
is Brian. That's real. Those are his two big ones.
Just making
Is
sure.
sports in general, definitely Seahawks history.
Yes.
Anything
Mariner
Seahawks
history. Mariner history.
Give me the Broncos, Brian.
Mariners less so. I'm not as accurate with the Broncos, but I will tell you that Dave Wyman, after his Seahawks career, which coincidentally ran from 1987 to 1993, 1992, he did play for the Broncos from 93 to 95.
So here's
There
what
you
we'll
go.
do. We'll just do like, I'm not going to give you like a T-ball question. So someone you should know with your idiot savant.
No, hey,
With your
name it and claim it,
savantness.
man.
No, can you give me Broncos quarterback 1992?
Yeah, that would have been John Elway outside of the time in 1992 when he was injured.
Can you give me the Patriots quarterback 1992?
Drew Bledsoe.
No, Drew Bledsoe was still playing for Washington State University in 1992.
You wanna know
they
my
drafted
family
him in
history with
1993 with the first pick in the NFL draft. Coincidentally, the Seahawks, because they defeated the Patriots in 1992, had the second pick in the NFL draft and were relegated to choosing Rick Mirer. Moment of silence for the years that we suffered under Rick Mirer's relative inability to throw to his left side.
So, funny story. My mom used to babysit Drew Bledsoe. He is from Waterville.
Yep.
His dad was the coach of the track team. She was in Bend the other day, and they went to their winery.
Yep.
He has a winery.
Yep, he does.
And then she talked to him.
Oh,
She
that's
was
so
like-
awesome.
She got to see him. She talked to him. Was like, "Hey, do you remember me?" And they talked about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah."
That's awesome. I believe in high school that he played for Prosser High School before he moved on to
yep,
WSU.
Yep, that's it.
He can tell you heights, weights.
You're getting too deep there, Vince. You're
Yeah.
getting me in the murky
He
waters,
can tell you
man.
stats. It's
Brian, how much do I weigh?
I plead the fifth on that.
It's just a joke.
What I will say is I simply admired that, and I attempted to adapt that with when I did make it into pharmacy school. Oftentimes, I just tried to replicate that, and eventually I reached a point where that became that way for mechanisms of action of drugs. and then it branched off into there's a trifecta with medication. So we talked about the mechanism of action, whether or not it truly is better than the placebo will lead to an improved outcome, whatever disease that drug is indicated to treat. And then you also have to tie that in with the contraindication or adverse reaction. So it is a trifecta. And so when I met Brian, listening to him speak, whether didn't matter what the subject was, if he was knowledgeable about it, it rubbed off in my desire to want to be to that caliber of knowledge. And now you now take those three things about a medication, and then you try to put it in a way that a patient will understand, so that they know how to take their medication to lead to that. And you have to now introduce that bridging. And I mean, that's just that coupled with his unbelievable kindness,
So you were meant to be a pharmacist?
No, for sure not. But I am humbled and really appreciate the fact that even something as seemingly outside of pharmacy as being able to rattle off Seahawks stats to you, or maybe the date that a particular jam of a Grateful Dead tune was played, had an influence on you in the fact that it made you want to study medications and their actions and their effect on patients in the same way. That's a really cool thing, and that warms my heart in a way that I can barely express here on microphone, my friend.
Absolutely. I mean, it was just, I saw it and I was like, well, how do I get to that level? And eventually, when you study it long enough, it just starts to click, and you start to, you start to see the bigger picture of things, and
Totally.
and you see where the pieces fit. And
Brian, so heartfelt.
Easily the most heartwarming TPDM moment right there.
He's just
Definitely.
he's just a good friend, man. And
And he deserves it because he edits this podcast and he does amazing work on it. And even though he's not on the microphone every time, he's our behind the scene guy. And you do it, man.
Well, thank you, Katie. I appreciate it. It's some of it comes from that same determination and stubbornness that caused me to want to pick up 40-pound monitors and lug them across a room,
It's
despite
passion.
my physical stature.
Absolutely.
But
It's
yeah,
passion.
I mean, part of it is I feel like if I can do my small part to help people express themselves in a way that helps other people, then I think we all grow. And we learn and we become more positive by that. And I think that makes the world a better place to be in.
Well, you make Luke a better person by sticking true.
Well,
you go.
thank
This
you.
probably doesn't matter.
No, you don't have to do it yet.
But it absolutely does.
But
And
this is
That's
easily the longest podcast we've done.
Yeah, I love it. They're going to listen because this is interesting.
Thank you.
There goes my marketing.
you want to get a
point.
little lightning round going real quick, or do we not
Hell
have
yeah.
anything planned for that?
we still
I
haven't
can make
even,
one up.
We can go for it off the top of our heads.
Okay. So we're
I'll
gonna do
do
the
one.
lightning round via the three of us
yeah,
with no.
So all of
with
us
no
ask.
pre-planned.
We're asking you the question.
pre-planned questions.
We're
Yeah.
all gonna shoot
The
at
three of
Vince.
us are gonna say one question. Would you rather?
Yep.
You can make would you rather or whatever.
And Brian has to start.
Okay.
Okay.
And I get to end.
Okay.
Okay.
Or do
I
I?
think whoever asked the question, all three of the rest of us need to answer it.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah.
So, like, him and
let's
us?
do yeah.
Okay.
So if you ask the question, you don't have to answer it, but let's go. Vince, come up with a would you rather real quick right here on the spot.
that we all have to answer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Everyone who did not ask the question is going to have to answer it.
Okay. And we'll
here
all
we
go around. The four of us will do it.
I'll start.
Okay.
Is this just him, or is it all like if I ask a would you rather, the three of you have?
All
to
three of
Yep.
us are going to
Okay,
answer
okay,
all.
okay.
Everyone who's not asking
Sorry.
the question should
Got
be
it.
giving an answer to the question
Okay.
in turn.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Okay.
Lightning round.
Lightning round.
Here we go. Would you rather eat a bat from a Wuhan marketplace or lick the toilet plunger in the bathroom back here?
Bat.
I'd rather lick the toilet plunger.
I'm going to take my chances with the bat.
You're going bat.
Unless
You
it
want to
has
know
trick
why?
and-
Because it's my own shit that's
That's an easy way to look at that. It's something you know.
Unless the bat has like
Rabies.
Hey,
trichomonas.
it could also have coronavirus. Depends on how healthy your lungs feel right now.
I don't know. For me, it's my own toilet thing, so it doesn't like scare me. But I'd go bat probably any other way.
Gotcha.
Would you rather have a leaky pipe drip on your cheek every second, or have someone pinch you every minute?
Ooh, that's shitty.
Boy, it's like
Can you move?
Chinese water torture, or
Can you move from the leaking, or it like follows you?
It's like a rainy cloud.
It's
I'd rather have
always
that.
there. Yeah, I think I
that's
could
me.
deal with the dripping over time. I feel like eventually I would
Pinching me? Like,
punch
I'd be
that
like, "Fuck
person,
you."
and there would be some physical violence involved, and I feel like it could escalate to prison potentially. Yeah,
I'm going pinch it.
Luke's the maverick in this
Why?
case. I
You
like
don't
it.
want to be sick.
Less often, once a minute versus once a
Oh,
second.
yeah,
What
he's
was
taking
the-
into
what
account the
was the water?
frequency. It's
What?
every second. You're getting
Just a drip of water,
every
just
second.
a tiny one single
It's
drop.
not even
one
sewage.
single-
It's not even. It's just
I
water.
get it. Yeah, it's water.
Water in
I
general.
still-
It's not gonna
still-
make you sick.
No,
Oh,
I'm
God.
fine.
I'm gonna start doing this. I'm gonna
Okay.
start pinching you.
All right, I got one. This is going to be more in the positive. Would you rather live the life of an elite NFL running back, or would you rather have the responsibility and potential positive aspects of being the president of the United States for 3 terms, which I realize is beyond term limits, but that's kind of the point of the question.
Isn't it technically there is no limit?
Okay, we can go with there is no limit. I like it.
FDR served 3 terms.
Yeah, let's take away term limits. And would you rather live the limited life or limited career span of an NFL running back, or be an unlimited term U.S. president and have all the perks and the responsibilities, potential drawbacks that come from that?
Running back, easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Same.
No one's doing.
Do you see what happened to Bush, Clinton, and Obama? I mean, the aging is just.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Golly. Yep.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm running back. No
All
matter
right.
what.
We're all going beast mode. I like it.
So I'm boring, and I'm looking up a question. Would you rather have the ability to travel or stop time,
Travel through time or stop
time travel or stop time?
Mm.
Time travel
For how long?
doesn't say. I don't know.
Unlimited.
Forever.
The possibilities
Your
are
whole life.
infinite. Yeah.
Your whole life.
I'm stopping time. I'm stopping time.
I would travel. I would want to be able to travel to any point in time. Butterfly effect.
I actually am a little bit hesitant of the butterfly effect, and so I think I would stop time.
I'm stop. Stop. You can do good things if you can stop it.
Yep. Now there is, once it
Can't control.
restarts,
Yeah.
sure, once it restarts afterwards, you do have to consider the butterfly effect from that moment onwards.
So it happens in both scenarios then.
Right. But you have a potentially infinite sequence of butterfly
stopped it.
effects if you choose traveling, because you have to consider at each point at which you travel, what is the effect, and does that effect carry on for later travels?
Can
Or
you
do
control
start
that
from
effect
a
either?
reset
You guys
point?
just took this a whole nother level.
You guys watch Rick and Morty?
No.
I have.
Katie said to it.
That sounds like nonsense.
It's
Show me.
it's a disturbing show.
There's shit on my ass.
I can't even finish Breaking Bad. Like, I'm not going to finish a disturbing show. Like,
Oh, I
don't
feel
even
like
know.
Breaking Bad is a lot more potentially psychologically damaging,
I had
simply
dreams
because
that my dad and I were cooking meth.
I can't picture Gary cooking meth under
Right?
any circumstance.
There was the lightning round. We'll make it sound quicker. Shit. Okay, so we're gonna look out for Vince's podcast.
And
Because-
then we're
on the
going to do a
horizon.
second one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We got to have you on
Vince
again, my
back.
friend.
Yeah.
We
This
still
has
haven't
been
even covered marijuana,
way
I
too much
know.
fun.
which could be another 2 hours.
Let's outro on it just for a limited amount of time. So
But of course,
if we were going to think about it, we covered a lot of ground that was what would be
very difficult.
Yeah, well, that, and it would be classified by the FDA as Control 2 substances. So that's some medical use, but potential for either really adverse side effects or addiction potential. So they create a lot of
restrictions.
Yeah, thank you. And cannabis is federally a Control 1 substance, which is classified as no medical use whatsoever, which seems to fly in the face of a lot of anecdotal as well as scientific research. So to put it in very layman's and possibly vulgar terms, what in the fuck are we doing here having marijuana at a higher control level, a more stringent control level than something like heroin or methamphetamine?
You want me to answer that?
Anybody can answer that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll start with the expert. Absolutely.
Well, I'm no botanist, but THC as an organic structure has a brand name called Marinol, or it's either Dronabinol and Marinol's the generic, or vice versa. I can't remember off the top of my head. And it actually is a C3.
Okay.
And comes in a capsule form, and it's refrigerated, and it is FDA approved to stimulate the appetite in patients who are cachexic due to severe HIV infection or chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting.
So it makes them hungry.
Correct. Well, it prevents cachexia. Cachexia is wasting. So literally, we talked about burning carbohydrates and fats. Eventually, when you reach a minimum body fat percentage, which is about 4 to 5%, your body starts to burn muscle, and it indiscriminately takes muscle, whether that be from the muscle in your arm, the muscle in your heart, the muscle in your digestive tract, and it just picks and chooses. And if it reaches a certain point, you can experience mortality. And so what Marinol does is it stimulates the appetite to build up the fat storage so that you never reach that level. Now, that being said, that is pharmaceutically manufactured and concentrated in a certain dosage and can be controlled. When you have the plant, doesn't matter whether or not you clone a plant, you cannot control the amount of THC in addition to the other pharmacologic substances in that plant.
300 alkaloids and counting.
Exactly. Terpenes. I've heard the word terpenes.
You have CBD also.
CBD.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. So now that brings up a completely different CBD. Doesn't really exhibit the same effects as THC.
It's totally different, right?
It may bind to the CBD receptor, but a lot of the times, now depending on the dose, if you do use CBD, you may not get the hallucinogenic side effects in comparison to the THC. That's also dose dependent, but I think at certain amounts of CBD, you can still exhibit that, but it doesn't have the same affinity, doesn't lead to the same binding. And I think that CBD is truly the if you were to divide that in between and compare it to THC, that is where the real medicine is. But that's not to say that THC does. I mean, we've already discussed that it has an indication. CBD is not what creates the appetite stimulation. It is the THC, that is for sure. But when you grow a plant, you cannot control that and dial it into the same precision as you can if you were to just simply extract the organic structure of THC and then reproduce that and expect the same results. So in my opinion, that is the argument. And plus, now I'm never going to believe that combustion in terms of smoking. Yes. Combustion is what leads to lung disease, right?
What would you say to someone who took Marinol and would take the gel caps and squirt them onto flower of marijuana?
and light that up.
Yeah, and just smoke that. I mean, if someone were to have done that, someone were to taken gel marinols and broken them open and then smoked them with their marijuana, did that do anything?
I think you're still getting combustion.
No, did it destroy the drug while that person was doing that?
Like,
It could.
are they
If you
high or
have direct
not?
flame
It's a
to
great
it, you
question.
could destroy the chemical structure of it and make it inert or ineffective.
When you look at marijuana, you see really concentrated bud. Looks like it has what? It's been rolled in sugar, right?
Yep.
That you have the plant leaf, okay? They call it the bud, right? And each bud, if you were to take a microscope, you can see a pore. And what happens is the plant oozes out the resin that at room temperature or within a controlled temperature range forms a crystalline structure. That is the THC. Within each unit of that crystalline structure, you have an unknown concentration of THC among the other alkaloids that you were talking about. You cannot control that. And if you take that plant and you try to reproduce it in, let's say you have the same conditions with which the previous plant was grown, you still can't control that. If you were to take, you're saying you're taking what is in that capsule and putting it on that plant and then lighting that plant. What do you expect to happen? Is that your question? I want to make sure I'm on the right page.
Probably what I would expect to happen is very little different than what you would have from that plant alone. And just as an aside, those structures that you mentioned that appear to be like sugar rolled on the actual plant substance, those are called trichomes.
Right. It's still a solid and in a lattice arrangement. And that's why I like to call hash crystal marijuana.
Ah, I like that.
Totally.
Right.
And
Crystal THC.
The whole concentrate thing it's a market that has been, I think, researched pretty well since we've been legal in Washington State. There was a bill recently that went through, and I'm about to talk about it without knowing what happened to it, but there was an attempt at taking any marijuana concentrate over 10% off the market, which was an insane number to throw out there because there's straight marijuana buds that are well into the 30s now, just on scientific research of growing the plant.
I'd say numbers I trust between 30 and 34%.
Yeah, it's probably like what you can get flour to anymore. So to say that we can't have a concentrate, any sort of oil, anything that you could put into a vape cartridge, which, there could be a whole nother podcast.
It's a whole
on
nother
vaping.
can of worms, yeah.
I would say that it's similar to smoking hash. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I mean that's what the concentrate thing is, and a lot of hash you used to be able to get back in the day. It was finger hash, which was literally the grimies that people would roll off of their fingers after they were trimming.
They pick it all day long,
yeah.
and what they do is they rub it, and then they can rub it all off.
Yeah,
and that is pure hash.
It's all the trichomes that have come off the plant while you were trimming it.
And it's a lot. I mean, that's concentrated.
It's definitely concentrated.
But I don't. The real interesting thing is I don't know what. Because that Marinol is a certain, that's like 3 milligrams. I think it's 3 milligrams per capsule.
I believe you're right.
What's funny about the Marinol
I don't know what percentage THC that translates to be honest.
Neither do I. What's interesting to me about the Marinol thing is like, I remember this is just high school stories, but we knew someone who had a prescription for it, and we used to take that particular person's gel caps, and we'd break them open, and we would smoke it on top of a bowl.
Fuck you up?
I have no idea. Probably not, because I'm guessing that Marinol, the way it was ever, what's the word? The word for what you put your drug with to have it absorbed into your
excipients?
body. The excipients probably were not designed to be burnt.
No, probably not. And
Right.
in fact, it appears to me that the THC, the way it's carried on those excipients, probably it would have degraded in the presence of flame because
Sure.
it's not attached to the
Anything
plant
like that,
still.
it should have been fat soluble because that's how most THC. Like if you're gonna ingest it any other way than inhalation, which actually raising it to temp and be able to take it in through your lungs would be it's fat soluble. We used to back in the days, you would take a couple sprinkles of marijuana and you would put it into peanut butter. You would spread the peanut butter onto a Ritz cracker and you would put it in the oven. The oven would heat it enough to be released into the fat in the peanut butter, and then when you ate that, it'd be like your mini edible, which you couldn't buy from a store back in the day. So that was like the quick edible version that we used to do.
Yeah.
You learn something new every day.
we were connoisseurs back then. That was the way to have an edible back in the day. Is you grind up a bunch, you put it into peanut butter, you spread the peanut butter on your crackers, you put the crackers in the oven. You had to have the heat to actually release the
Melt it.
Yeah, you had to release it. It is heat
And then the
release.
fat to dissolve it.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
dissolves like.
Yep. Exactly. So,
There it is.
guys, yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's this Vince. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
To
Thank you
have
for having-
here.
So
This has been
good.
so awesome.
Just
Can't plug your podcast. I want to plug your podcast so bad. So we're gonna point you all towards. Is there somewhere we can go to get like the few that you have right now? Is there anywhere we can
it's an
point someone
application called Anchor, and
Okay.
again, it's like I said, it's in its infancy.
towards? Okay.
And I still have yet to figure out how to post it in a way that is easily searchable.
Perfect.
But
Brian and I are gonna get you set up before you leave town, even. And
Absolutely.
We're gonna get you set up with with the application that we use, which
Yep.
is Libsyn, and we'll talk about having you as a part of the This Probably Doesn't Matter family. And,
Totally.
Thank
we'll
you.
get you hooked up, man.
So you're gonna
We'll do it.
100% hear more from Vince in the very, very near future.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Last words, anyone? Katie, love you.
I'm
Vince.
out of words.
Absolutely nice to meet you. Brian's a guy. He's sitting there. And everyone, please, as always, remember that this probably doesn't matter.
Thanks, folks.
Woo! Whoop.